Okay, Mark, it's October 16th. I feel like it's time for us to get our stance on aliens showing up on the record. I feel like it might be about that time.
To discuss our opinion?
I mean, yeah, there's certain psyops. There's certain psyops where I'm like, man, I wish I would have, when I saw this coming, I wish I would have said, I think this is a psyop, because now everyone's emotionally attached for some reason. And there's a bunch of stories about how you're a bad person if you know this is a psyop. So maybe I want to put this out there first. And so, yeah, it seems like, I didn't think they were going to go for it, but it seems like maybe we are going to have some sort of contact spectacle.
Yeah. Do you think it's primarily a psyop?
I've always been of the belief that if there is some sort of large scale alien, quote unquote, invasion, that it is most likely some sort of psyop, specifically if it's centralized around the government. I think that contact is actually something that's going to happen through individuals, through like telepathy. Like, it's already happening.
Right. It's more of an internal experience, not some external, like they land on the Capitol's lawn, like they always say.
Yeah. If it's through the government, which is like an illusion, a relatively new and expiring illusion of this realm, I am just like, oh, let me guess, you're going to create a false adversary and pretend to protect us from it? Like, the
if it ever comes
tired.
through the official channels, it's skeptical for sure. There's a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people are keyed into that there's a lot of, I mean, I guess there's probably 50-50 that I've seen online with any of the, the current heightened activity of it. There's a lot of people going, Project Bluebeam, don't fall for it.
Right.
And then there's a lot of people that, do for the first time see it or whatever, that they tend to want to lean towards like, oh, they are coming, and here we are now. They are going to have full contact. I think it's harder to fall for it. I mean, it's easier to fall for it if you're having a direct experience and you see it. It's like undeniable, and you want to pretty quickly believe that they are showing up and either are going to save us, or it's just an exciting, like, new chaos. But
yeah, like, people are bored.
Yeah.
They want to believe that that's real. And I could be wrong, and I'll have to wait until it happens and read the energy to have my actual take. But it doesn't make any sense to me that would be the way that contact happens.
Yeah.
Unless it's very beneficial for the, like, evolution of consciousness. But as of right now, the way that everything is controlled, it just seems like the last chaos event you could create, that after the virus and everything that happened with that, it'd be extremely difficult to create a singular event in which you could get the entire world on the same page. I think that would be very difficult to do, because that was such a polarizing event that took so many people in so many different directions. And so some sort of quote unquote alien invasion really is kind of the last one that you could do. But it's so obvious to me that I'm like, surely they're not even going to attempt that, especially since you have so many people on the internet talking about Project Bluebeam or whatever. And I don't know anything about Project Bluebeam, but there are flaming things falling out of the sky on a semi-regular basis right now. So, and I even catch myself getting excited for a second, because it is like, and it'll be be exciting if it's a psyop. But when the psyops happen, everyone gets, I don't know what this thing is where everyone gets polarized and then makes it a moral question. So I'm just like, well, I'm just going to say this before it happens so that I don't get stuck in the same moral trap that I get stuck in it, where I'm afraid of being a bad person by stating the obvious. And the obvious is, who holds all the tech? Who stands to benefit from everybody needing to, like, hand over their autonomy in order to be protected from an adversary? Just keep that in mind, please. We're all bored. It's about to get exciting. It'll be exciting no matter what.
That's what seems obvious to me when you do a lot of the deep diving on Project Bluebeam or the World War II stuff with the Thule Society, the Thule Society. I don't know how you say that word, but it's pretty obvious that they have, our governments have had access to that technology for a long time, whether that was first through some kind of contact or an alien ship crashing and them back engineering it or whatever. But there's so much evidence that the government has been in contact or has technologies that if with this theory that there's like, this is the first time, oh my God, they're all showing up. Obviously that's not the case. And so if it's coming through those main routes through the government and like a disclosure like they had months ago within Congress or whatever, they were talking about it and they had, forget the guy's name, but he was like the lead guy in disclosing that like, okay, we have found craft, there's this and this, but I can't tell you certain things. It's obvious that is some kind of show and kind of play to get people to bend a certain way. If you just consider that they've had this stuff for years,
right? It's
pretty hard to not assume that this is some kind of psyop.
Now, do you think, because I don't really have a deeper theory than that, like, do you think there's a moment, this is way too sci-fi movie, but do you think there's a moment where like the service to self beings from 4D team up with the puppets in the 3D that they use as kind of a last ditch effort to give people, because I think if there is a quote unquote spiritual war happening, that we are at a moment of people stepping into their own power and into their own creative ability, which is deeply decentralizing and dehomogenizing and it just like is the end of the centralized power. And not everyone will autonomize. And I think there is a small group of people that they are trying to like harvest into some sort of control system so they have some sort of battery to get them through.
Yeah.
And so there's a need to continue to create either like super divisive situations, but even the divisiveness is like to serve the purpose of getting people to seek a savior in the system, right? Like you have to continuously convince people that they need you. And even though you're proving incompetent on every front, you're not incompetent, you don't care, right? And so some sort of like, and how much of this propaganda were we fed in movies in the 90s of like some sort of invasion that is unprecedented and we've been, shooting them out of the sky. But now we need everyone to just do what we say so we can protect you from the thing. That's my thing is like, I don't trust this corrupt system for shit at all about anything. And all you gotta do is tell me you're protecting me from something. And I'm like, all right, well, this is some fucking shady bullshit. And because it is every single time they say they're protecting us from something, we find out 20 years later that it was actually just some corrupt money laundering scheme. And it's like, how many times are you going to fall for the same thing? So that is my initial go-to. Now, some aliens might show up and their energy might feel real. And I might go, okay, well, never mind. I'm going to walk this back. But like, as of right now, the timing of it is a little interesting. But my question is, do you think this is like, what do you think these things falling out of the sky is? Do you think this is, remember the plasma? You were listening to some guy that was talking about plasma something. Was that the simulacrum guy?
No.
They all just kind of mashed together in my head.
No, I forget who. It might have been Dan Winter that like opened that up to me. There's a lot of people talking about it. That plasma is this like fourth state of matter. Fourth? I don't know. It's a different state of matter that is in the ether. It's like what people call dark matter. And it's like very malleable. It's programmable. It's like what creates illusions or hallucinations and stuff. It's like the material that displays whatever your consciousness needs to perceive it as. So it's like when you have some kind of paranormal event, or like the Mothman thing, it's the physical like matter that is used as the screen.
Yeah, it's interesting because the aliens, plasma is the best way to describe them. Like, it seemed like I could put my finger through them. Like, don't put your finger through them because it's rude, but that's what they seem like, gelatin or something.
Yeah, and so I think some of the theories are, like, if this is a Project Bluebeam or some psyop, is that there are certain parts of the government that have tapped into that matter and understand how to program it and use it to display something of their liking. Again, so you're using that as like a new screen to kind of control people and say, through movies for years, oh, these aliens that might come and then they're going to show up like this, and they're either going to be trying to save us or prevent us from nuclear war, or they're going to be nefarious and try to do something. And so then they use that whole background like blueprint to then have an event occur, and they're the ones that are actually controlling it and making it look a certain way.
Right.
But what I do think is interesting is that this also relies on the individual viewing it. I would think in some ways can see through that projection and override it and go, like one person will see a saucer kind of thing and it'll land and a gray alien will pop out. Someone that might be more autonomous and consciously evolved themselves might see, no, it didn't look like a saucer. It looked like a refrigerator or something. And the being that got out was not a gray alien. It was like this Nordic thing. And so you see different levels of it, I think, depending on your conscious awareness and how much you have been able to, override the programming of the culture and see through the illusion. And so I think that might be like a side effect or something that is not that the government maybe is not prepared to actually be able to control.
Right.
But I don't know how in depth that goes. I
mean, I would think it would be fucking sick if some higher dimensional beings showed up in crafts and it served the purpose of just blowing open the minds of the people who are still like really stuck in the density of scientific materialism. And then they helped to decentralize society because they didn't go through the government or whatever.
I just think that occurs.
There's a million scenarios that would be hella cool. They just don't feel realistic to me.
Yeah, and I think that only occurs like
that's like my savior thing, right?
If it's something that's good, like that's beneficial for individuals, I think that contact happens on an individual basis. They don't come to the main stage and come through the government, and the government tells us, hey, they've showed up. That's all fucking sketchy. But, for a long time, I mean, I would think probably all the way back, as long as you can go in history, individual contact has happened on a regular basis on both sides of nefarious or like beneficial. But that seems to be the only place that it could kind of be trusted,
right?
Is that if you're individually having contact. And I do think that's primarily through an inner world. It's an inner knowing, an inner experience that you get pulled into. It's not always external.
Right.
I think it can be both, but it seems to be, the more I learn about the STO thing, the STO contact only comes when you're asking for it in a pure way, and it comes very internal and individual, and that's the beneficial aspect of it. When it's something that's like very external and very public and has some kind of exchange going on, I'll do this for you, but you have to do this. That's something that I think is more along that STS kind of complicated interaction that that's where all the psyops exist. And I would definitely think, I think that there is a communication going on between the leaders of the world and what we would call aliens or like hyperdimensional beings. But I think it also gets blurry with, are those aliens from another place, or are they really like of this realm? They're just hyperdimensional, and a lot of that is actual humans. They're not the creatures,
right?
But they use plasma to display themselves as a creature because that's the narrative and that's the controllable narrative. But it's advanced tech, so it's like this could all be humans from the future just using plasma to display as a gray alien or a, you know, some other kind of mantid being. But I think those all do exist. It gets complicated, but I think that's a huge part of this is a lot of what we call extraterrestrials are actually humans in a hyperdimensional dimension that have traversed time and have crazy tech that's hard to fathom, where they can present to you as a certain being and then also activate your emotional state to feel a certain way when you interact. And that's just so, I think, over most people's heads as far as if they haven't a contact, to be able to understand that's the mechanism that's going on. So most people are, you know, so sure about the contact that they had because of the emotional feelings that they have and what they saw with their own eyes, but then don't go to the next level of going, well, what is controlling all of that? Like it's such an advanced technology. They can tap into my emotional state and make me see a certain thing. So I have to start to unpack that aspect of it before I am so sure that what I saw was real and external and it was good because it made me feel a certain way. It's that advanced. And that's what I think it does create. It requires somebody that has a heightened awareness of these elements of reality to be able to traverse truly, is this a being that is going to benefit my experience, or
right.
Is there some kind of like manipulation and hijacking going on?
Well, there's going to need to be discernment. And then I guess the other thing is similar to the virus. When that happened, everyone ended up in a different version of reality. Like, you know, some people who lost a bunch of people, you know, some people who never got it, no one they know ever got, or it was a cold or it's whatever. You have some people who think it was about the government taking their freedom, other people who had no experience with the government taking their freedom. And then they all just fought with each other as if it was one singular thing.
Yeah.
And they fought about what it was. And to this day, one of them believes that the other side is perpetuating a lie, or you fell for the psyop. And then the other people are like, you're denying, you know, and the people who are like, you're denying it, they lost people, you know?
Right.
And so that was really when I saw like, oh, the split's happening. Like we're literally just drifting in different directions. And I love the thing that Bashar says about you could still see people living in other realities through like energetic glass, but you're not actually there. And the internet gives us this illusion of being in the same reality with people that we're not, because that's where a lot of those arguments happen. And so I think it would be very similar if something like this happened. Everyone's going to have a different experience with it. At this point, and I have long suspected that the aliens that I was in contact with or am in contact with are just me in the future. And I think we are headed, I think what the quote unquote light body is that we're moving toward will look like what we think are aliens, you know?
Right.
The aliens I'm in contact with, they're not from Mars, you know? And I think that all of our mythology is hyper material mythology because we have been like our entire lives have been lived in extreme like scientific materialism. The 3D is the physical plane, right? So the mythology is goofy if you think about it. Like what do we think that like a spaceship is going to arrive and then we're going to have to like hash it out like. And so it's like, and then what, you know? And then I think a lot of us, even in myself, like getting excited for a second about these like crafts getting shot down. There's just a part of me that's like bored and ready for things to get more supernatural.
That's how I am too.
That I didn't even really think about it. I mean, we went to a wedding in Baltimore. And so we were like driving in the path of where like DC, and then the other one was Raleigh's, not far from our house. So there, you know, and then there was something about that was exciting to me. But then I'm like, what do I actually believe? So I'm still open to what it could be. But as of right now, it just depends. It depends if it's centralized through the governments and the corporations. If it's centralized through the governments and corporations, I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's the whole disclosure thing that's happening in Congress and stuff. All of that's sketchy.
Yeah.
There's maybe some half truths to that, but it's definitely not the full story. It's part of their presentation as we move closer and closer, maybe to a legitimate, like the collective finally experiencing some form of contact together. That I think this is part of the programming, is like a slow, soft disclosure that then they can control the way this works.
Yeah, I just don't understand why when you know an individual who has proven to be shady or like self-serving or a liar or a manipulator, like you know someone who's like that, maybe it takes a few times to learn the lesson, but eventually you should have like a blueprint of who this person is and how they operate. And so everything should go through that filter. Like, let's say you have a family member, like a parent who's I hate the narcissist label, but like is deeply manipulative to get some sort of their own selfish need met or whatever. How many times do you fall? Like, how many times do they prove that to you before you just assume that is the motive? And that's how I feel about anything to do with the system, the government. It's like, you have proven over and over and over and over again that you're a deeply corrupt organization, organized crime, really. Your interests have nothing to do with the people and the individuals, and that it's just kind of this scheme, the scam to continuously get people to give up their power to this, so that their energy and their attention and their money could be like laundered to some small group of people. So when they talk about aliens, I'm like, what angle are you working here?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and then they just they keep declassifying CIA documents, so that you do know what kind of angle they're working. And I don't know if it's because different people come in or something, that like they just keep presenting like these people are different than the last people. And it's one of these things where I just am like, I feel like I'm living in a crazy world, watching people engage with anything the government says as anything other than there is like an organized like crime thing that has like taken over the environment, and we're just kind of waiting for it to collapse. It's overplaying its hand. And then when people take it seriously, I just literally feel like I'm talking to people who are like really invested in pro wrestling. I'm like, yeah. And that includes and I haven't done spent a lot of time or energy in the like, what is that group of people called that are really into UFOs and what is it? What does Bashar say is going to happen? Like
disclosure,
contact, whatever. Yeah, I'm like, that's already happening. It's the hyperdimensional beings, whatever you want to call it, they communicate telepathically. They're not physical beings. And so it's not a material experience. It's an etheric experience. I just don't know why they would. I do believe the crafts are sometimes, I do believe beings are traveling in crafts, but they're traveling in a different dimension and a different like frequency. That's why you can't get a good video of them.
And then they pop in, you know, I think it is, some of these things are half physical and half not. And then they can, you know, lower their frequency or modulate their frequency into the physical existence temporarily and then pop out. But I think that it's always the question is if you can realize through a lot of like pretty thorough research that
I went through a phase where I was sorry, we just had to take a break because I got a call from the school about a conflict with the kids. Anyway, I don't want to tell their business on the podcast.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind with all of this, like the disclosure and stuff that they said in Congress and all this stuff talked about UAPs, oh my God, they are here and they're confirming, the government's finally confirming it, which by the way is so weird that happened and nobody even blinked an eye. Everybody's like, yeah, okay, back to TikTok, back to just dancing and shit. And it's like, what? Whoa. It's a big deal. But I think the thing to always keep in mind with any of this stuff is that, yeah, there are probably beings and crafts that are more on the, let's say, like natural occurrence, that there are just other beings in here that are local in another dimension that oftentimes cross into this dimension and interact. And I think a lot of those are not necessarily good. Those are nefarious too. There's an option for both. But then at the same time, the government or whatever, they have the capability too. Like they have for a long time. And so being able to discern when something happens, is this something natural and more connected to my personal individual experience? Or is this something that is being displayed and I'm having this experience to manipulate me to think and be a certain way, which would be more on the government side controlling that. And so that deep discernment of what it is the lesson. And
at a minimum, they are deeply opportunistic. So it's like, did the government do 9/11 or did they just use it as an opportunity to invade Iraq? Like,
right.
Did they have something to do with,
and
more recent things that happened? But like at the minimum, the second the shit hits the fan, these assholes are like, okay, where do we buy stock? What laws can we impose in order to make more money on that stock? How can we benefit from this?
I think the other interesting part of it too is that it's not necessarily they that are doing it. When we're saying like the government and stuff, it's not that I think they have access to a lot of this crazy technology and they are in contact with other hyperdimensional beings, but they too are being puppeted. And it's not like that they have the entire blueprint of reality and like know what they're doing necessarily.
Right.
It's being run through the narcissistic kind of psychopath mentality of a lot of the people that are in leadership positions, whether that's extreme psychopath or it's just a narcissistic, like I'm here to benefit myself. And that's what's puppeted. That's what's used. So they too are being played by, hyperdimensional beings that are way more powerful as far as conscious awareness and the ability to see the entire chess game and get things to play out how they want to play out. Like they're being puppeted, they don't know everything and they're not like, yes, they are elements of the like control and the suppression, but they're not like, they're being puppeted too. So that's the importance of individualizing, getting autonomy and not looking for anybody to save you.
Yeah.
Because that's the mechanism that is the controllable part of it. And I always think it's just good to keep in mind when this is occurring, because it's easy to feel like a victim and we're always being controlled by the government. But like they don't know what the fuck the big picture is either. They're just playing within their small realm of serve myself. Like what do I need to do? And that's what's hyper controllable. And so it's not really like that big of a deal. It's just pro wrestling. It's like watching them make their moves and then a bunch of people take it seriously when it's like that's not the case. Again, I'm on the belief that anything that's going to be some kind of contact and you're going to have a widening of your awareness of the reality and see another being or a UFO or something, it's the stuff that is for your benefit is not going to be, it's going to be kind of inner experience, and it's going to be, if you've asked for guidance in some way, then that's where it will come through. Anything that's just like going to happen to you and it's like, hyper external, it's like an attempt to get you to do something, to think a certain way, or to shift your reality into a way that benefits them in
Right.
some way. And so I think anything that's on the main stage and that's like hyper external is probably not something that is actually beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, the lesson I hope we're learning is to trust your own experience of things. Like, you have eyes. What are your eyes seeing? You have senses. What are your senses taking in? And then obviously we all have the blinders of our own perception, right? So it's like, if I've lived my entire life bored and wanting the, like, craving the redemption, like validation of people seeing the aliens are real, then that's going to cloud my discernment if it is bullshit, right?
Right.
And if I want to be saved by the aliens, because you see people like they want to be saved by the aliens. And then there are other people who want to be saved by Jesus, like the amount of people who are like, this is the end times, and everything is confirmation bias to that. I don't know what the Christians think the aliens are. I think they think they're demons or something. And then you have people who haven't been thinking about aliens at all. And when the alien thing comes, if the government goes, we'll save you from them, they're bad aliens, then people are like, yes, I fucking love that story of the government saving me. So I don't know yet, but I didn't think they were even going to try that. I didn't think it was going to be part of the reality. Even when Bashar, who I resonate with, unless he talks about fucking weird government shit, in which case I think you hear his filter pretty hard. I've just always thought contact was like, the way that we've all had contact, through dreams, through the astral, through telepathy, whatever, the way that higher dimensional beings communicate, I feel like we are outgrowing the physically oriented, the material, exclusively material reality. I want to say, I think we'll still like exist in the material reality, but I did want to circle back to last week's episode a little bit. It's so funny what a mirror podcasting is, in that just like the people in your life are a mirror and the people you see on social media are a mirror. But I used to do this thing, like this was my entire personality actually previous to 2019, where I'm actually deeply non-confrontational. And I used to have really bad boundaries. I've been working on boundaries for the last few years, but I carried myself as someone who was confrontational. I don't know how to describe that. Like, I carried myself with a lot of like bravado that I picked up, I think, when I was pretty young, because I had to be tough in a lot of the environments that I was in as a small child, and then as a teen, and then obviously on drugs and shit. And so the process through Mormon and the meth head was me like shedding that. And then in the summer of 2019, I had this duffel bag of feelings thing I called, like, all of a sudden this like unearthing of my actually deeply emotional, soft, vulnerable nature. And then I think like anyone who's been around since 2020, 2021, whatever, has seen a much more like open, vulnerable, soft, emotional version of me. But when I get defensive, and you've seen this, right, as my partner, but when I get defensive or my feelings hurt or I feel unsafe in any way, if I go into like a fight trauma response, that bravado shows up again. And it's so cringy now because it's just like, I don't know why, but I just start like sucking my own dick. Like it's like braggy kind of. And I'm really just don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. And so I was thinking, this is what cats do. I may be a cat. This is what like cats do. There's a video going around on Instagram, I think I sent you, of a guy like walking into the room with a wolf mask or something, and the cat is like doing the like wow thing. But she's like making herself look like a Halloween cat, you know, where she's just, her hair's all puffed up and she's trying to make herself, where if that is an actual wolf, if that is an actual 6'2" wolf, you're fucked, cat. You know what I mean? You're
Do you say wolf without the L?
I think
wolf.
I am saying wolf.
It's adorable.
And I think wolf. I don't think I usually say it like that. Wolf?
Yeah. Wolf.
Wolf. I don't go hard L.
Wolf.
Wolf. Anyway, we say it too many times. It was turning into wolf for sure.
Yeah, you definitely have that response like a cat does. Like you try to make yourself as big as possible. And I think that's why a lot of people take you as somebody that you don't want to fuck with. Yeah. Which is true on a certain level. Like you can turn into a giant cat. You can make yourself look bigger than you are.
But it's such bullshit.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, you are more soft and like actually pretty sensitive to criticism and, you know, things like this, like a comment that is obviously coming from someone that's having their own experience and is like in a victim kind of, or trying to prove themselves. And I think you can realize that, but then it also still stings. And so then you turn into a big bad scary Halloween cat momentarily.
Yeah, well, I get condescending, and I get like when I had to go back and listen to that episode 50 times, and the reality is I couldn't get you to record another one. And I'm like, I don't know, we could have just skipped putting out an episode. There were aspects of the episode I really liked, and there was an underlying like general point about, you know, the avoidance of pain causes suffering.
Yeah, I think it was a really good podcast, actually. It had a lot of good...
There were things I liked about it, so there was that. But the entire way that I was coming into the conversation, if I'm being honest, the comment hurt my feelings. And it also triggered the PDA thing. It's hard for me to get, like, condescended to. And so it's like, if the comment were, do you guys feel like... or like... I'm of the belief, or from my perspective, talking about sickness makes it worse or whatever. And that is an irritating concept to me. But if I'm being honest, it's a place I sat for years. Yeah. Like, you know, in the time where I was trying to like hack like abundance, like 2008 to 2013, I spent a lot of time in that perspective and trying to figure that out. And what I found was the avoidance of negative things makes you still create the negative things in an avoidant state, because avoidance is magnetic. And that's what I was trying to say in that podcast, but I had to edit it out because I was not making any sense. But if I start to create something and then I have like a fear that it's going to fail, I have to sit with the fear of failure. When I was doing stand-up, I learned that avoiding the potential of bombing in my mind attracted bombing more. So when I learned to, if you ever have been around me when I do stand-up, the last thing I say before I go on stage is, I might bomb. Because I learned that when I sit with the thing I'm afraid of, it's less likely to happen.
Yeah.
And the thing that's funny about me getting sick on this trip is that I was preoccupied with avoiding sickness. Like I was, you know, being really strict about what the kids were eating and everything else to avoid sickness. So it is like, duh, I pulled this timeline with my avoidance of it. And so the concept that talking about sickness, it was the condescending tone when I was already like not in a great space that like triggered the PDA. So it triggered this kind of like, don't talk to me like I'm a child. And then also I think it hurt my feelings. And something I've been trying to embody for the last couple of years is like, bitch, when your feelings get hurt, just say your feelings are hurt. But I still have way less than I used to, but I still have a shame. I think being a very sensitive kid, like I'm a Pisces sun and moon, I was very sensitive, and I am very sensitive. And then I was in an environment where there was no space for that. You know, meth mom was not holding space for feelings. And so as a kid, you get told like, that's not something to cry about or whatever. And so I developed this like deep shame around sadness or like hurt feelings or sensitivity. And then I created all these like false parts of my personality to hide my sensitivity. And until 5 years ago, I never cried around anyone ever. I cry all the fucking time now. But if you catch me on the wrong day, I'll just get knocked into a fight trauma response, which I think a lot of that episode was. This was very cringy for me to listen to. So then the other thing that's funny is a part of my criticism of that person was like wanting to sanitize your actual experience or someone else's actual experience in order to appear spiritual.
Right.
And the thing that's really funny is I really wanted to get rid of that episode because I felt very exposed and like I was very in my ego. It's very obvious I'm in my ego, like in that episode. And if I was given the option to get rid of that episode and record a different one, I wanted to do that. Why? Because I wanted to sanitize
it. Yeah.
I hate it. Why?
I think it brings up, I think everything you're saying is really valid. And it's like, you got to be honest. If your hurt, feelings are hurt, talk about it and recognize that that's what's turning you into a bravado kind of that reaction. But at the same time, then there's this other side of it that I think everybody's experiencing in different forms, especially just with the internet being this place where we're able to be ourselves and broadcast our uniqueness to a large group of people. That's going to be helpful for some people, but then some people are going to be activated by it and feel the need to criticize and tear down. And that then, pulls on our ability to like hold that and deal with it. Or, I think it's important to first go, oh, that hurt my feelings, and process it. But then the desire to sanitize everything that comes through the door that's negative is not congruent with the reality of the world we're living in, where you can broadcast yourself to a bunch of people that don't resonate with you, and they're going to mirror back something negative. And
right.
That's going to be in contrast to the way you feel. And how do we go about dealing with that? And I think it's important, like I've said, is like process the emotion, be honest with it, but then what you do with it has to kind of be run through this filter of like, can I control what everyone's going to think about me?
Right.
How much can I control, and what is the point of it? The point is to try to sanitize and only be presented as something that you see yourself as, which is just this honest, vulnerable wisdom seeker and sharer in like some kind of artistic way. But like, there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like it. And I always think about this just with music and being an artist for myself, is that I don't resonate with a lot of music that comes out, and I can get caught up and be mad and be like, this is shit music, and it's so successful, it's on the radio and everybody's singing it, but like, I don't like this. And with art, it's easier to look at it as like, it's all just subjective. There is no like good or bad art. It's all just like an expression of where someone's at. If I want to focus on like just getting rid of all the bad art, like you can never do it. It's just, everybody's going to be individual and express a certain way. So with my own art, if I put it out, it's something that's vulnerable and honestly me, that's going to be keys to some people. Some people are going to mirror back like the positive aspects of it. But then there are going to be some people that just don't resonate with it. And I don't take that too seriously anymore, because I've seen that it's like, well, that's just not for them. it's not really about me. It's not about my art and the vulnerability that I just put out there. They just don't like it. And that's cool, whatever. And I can move on. But it's hard because there is like everybody has this kind of elevated desire to like they have to speak their truth about this piece of art, and they want to tear it down and criticize it and just rip it to pieces. And that's just like how it is. But I don't think it's beneficial for us to take that too seriously. I think we can be hurt by it and emotionally process that, but then what our actions are going to be in response to that should be run through the filter of like, well, this person just doesn't like it and this is where they're at, and I can also discern like maybe they're a little unhealed in this aspect, and so they're just tossing this out at me. My always like the best way is to kind of like poke and make fun of it in a certain way that just takes the pain out of it, the sting out of it, and move on. But
well, in my head I thought what I was doing was that, and we're still processing this sickness aspects of it, some lingering stuff in the throat, and you're having some lingering brain fog and I'm having some lingering lethargy, but we recorded that episode over a week ago or something. So I feel like I was still very much swimming upstream, and I had way more brain fog than I thought I had. So when I went to edit it, I was like, Jesus Christ, I had to take a ton out of it because I never made a fucking point. And I thought I was trying to be funny and kind of like lightly roast this person. And then I do have strong feelings about the way that the New Age movement approaches everything needing to be positive, and the way that people who on social media, not connected to Ken Walker 1111 at all, like the way that I see a lot of things on social media where people who literally call themselves starseeds and truly believe they are sent here to assist with the ascension or whatever, have no capacity for people to have a negative experience. And there is a lot of like really bringing your head to a heart party. Like you could tell people who are still very much like existing in their mental space are intolerant of people who are having a hard time. And
Right.
So all those points, I stay next to those points, but in my head, what I was doing was kind of roasting this person, and then I wanted to use that as a bouncing off point to talk about this aspect of the New Age movement and how it is based in this idea that the purpose of reality creation is to create exclusively positive experiences, which for a lot of people, until you learn how to sit with the negative experiences, seeking positive experiences becomes a negative experience, right? Like the avoidance of pain becomes suffering. But all of the parts where I tried to make those points, I had to edit out because I never finished a sentence. But the thing that was happening in that episode that's very loud to me, that I wanted to escape or sanitize, and that I'm still like every 5 minutes think about and cringe, is that in the shadow, right, in my just outside of my awareness, there is another thing happening where I have a deep fear of people being mad at me. And I think it makes me feel like not safe, right? Like I had a volatile drug addict mother. I assume this is where it comes from. And so my sensitivity to criticism, I think, is like tied up in knots with a fear that I am not safe if people are mad at me.
And that's what makes sense. I think that's why it's always good to like just be honest about the emotion and figure out where it's coming from. And you pretty quickly can realize that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the response. And you went through a wave, like by the time we podcasted, you were down to like 50% of the bravado.
Yeah.
In the morning, you were like marching around here, like, bitching about it and kind of really in a defense thing.
Right.
And until you process it and get through it, then now like a week later, it's just like, oh, that was cringy that I even,
Yeah, I mean, I've been
responding
secretly
like that.
falling apart about this. I was kind of gently coming and being like, do you want to record another episode? And I edited that episode 65 times, which is like somehow worse. So to circle back, because we have like people that are in the comments that are just kind of say, I've been talking to microphones for a long time. Like there are people who don't like me. They for some reason still listen to me. They talk shit. Not every single one of those like gets under my skin. And
Right.
I read the comments, by the way, and you know this, on everything. Like I don't look at a TikTok without reading all the comments. I am very interested in how people digest information and the difference in perspective. And so I read the comments on almost everything always, and I don't take them all deeply personally, but I had to sit with this one for a minute to get to the root of like why that one was so extra triggering. And so while that is true that I don't like that aspect of the New Age movement, I do also understand it and have defended it. I do also think that the accusation of spiritual bypassing and see how everything's a paradox. Like a lot of times when people are calling other people spiritual bypassers or toxically positive, that the thing I don't like about those labels is that I don't believe that anyone has to sit with someone else's darkness. You don't have to listen to me talk about being sick. You're not under obligation to consume human suffering in order to be a good person. And there's kind of a epidemic of people thinking that. And then if you're not, and you are trying to steer your own frequency by avoidance of that, there is a lot of like people addicted to outrage and addicted to bummer ass shit, thinking that everyone else needs to be consumed, and they can't even process it. You know, they're like, I want to talk about Neptune and Pisces at some point, but we are getting our asses handed to us by an overabundance of empathy that we don't know what to do with. And so I also don't want to imply that the poor Ken Walker was doing something wrong by not being able to sit with the sickness. So there's a lot going on there. I didn't hold nuance in that episode. I was triggered in that episode. And what I would love to embody moving forward, and I'm just not there yet, is like curiosity when I'm triggered, and like not engaging with someone else says something, it triggers me, and then not wanting to debate the points.
Right.
But rather getting curious about what's triggering to me. And what's triggering to me about that comment, and it took me a while to sit with it, which is annoyingly a thing for me, is the implication that I'm hurting other people. That I'm putting other people in danger. Or like, you know, is because that was the nature of the comment, right? It's like, why would you subject the audience to that? Now, I wholly disagree with the point, and I've sat with it for a while now. I don't agree that talking about being sick is going to make other people sick, but I understand why some people think that. And the reality is there's some people that shouldn't, if the episode's going to be heavy, they don't have enough space to hold that, and they shouldn't listen to it. And that's true of everything. I think that checking in with your own capacity is important because it can make you feel hopeless if you're already feeling hopeless. But I got triggered by the implication, even if I don't agree with it, that I have done something wrong. And I don't know that we've talked about this on here, but I'm just going to say it on here so it's not like existing in the energy. But I really internalize the idea that talking into microphones like comes with this huge responsibility of like having a platform and that you're obligated to talk about things and Like I internalize a lot of that at a point where I had a pretty large quote unquote platform, and it overwhelmed the shit out of me. And I started doing and saying things and talking about things from a perspective that wasn't even honest or true to me, because I was trying to be seen as good. I do have some sort of like shame program running in the background where some of these ideas that have been moving around culture about like certain people from certain groups or certain privileges or innately bad or whatever, there's some masochistic part of me that likes to engage with that idea. And it caused a lot of anxiety, and it caused a lot of nervous system dysregulation and a lot of fear. And this has a lot to do with why I reclused and kind of, hung out on Patreon where I felt more safe and put out a few episodes. It all felt like the stakes were so high with every single fucking thing I said into a microphone. And this podcast is really me starting to come back out of that and kind of realize the stakes are not that high and that I don't have some deep responsibility to the world, to do anything other than be myself and be honest and be authentic. And there's that thing that happens when you get sick or you go on a trip or like getting sick. It happens a lot with me, is getting sick or like injured. But it's almost like if you just started to embody some change, there's not a deep enough muscle memory. So when you get sick, you like revert back to the last version. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Didn't we say that in this podcast?
We deleted it because we started the podcast over. There's a couple things I've said in the last few minutes that I can tell by the look on your face. We deleted that though.
Gotcha.
Anyway, I just need I'm sorry to Ken Walker. I disagree with you, but I didn't need to come in with two guns ablazing. Although sometimes it's funny. I just thought it was funnier than it was. That was the other thing. When I went back to listen to it, I was like, thought I was being funny, but clearly, like, if I had it to do over again, if the thing triggered me, I'm a human being, that's fine. I wish I would have came in with some curiosity and not preached a fucking like harebrained sermon about it. So I stand by some of my points, but man, the difference between like coming in and arguing someone else's perspective versus like curiously exploring the difference between the perspectives, it's like I want to embody that, and it's like so embarrassing when you don't. And then I'm like, no, but of course that had to go out because that's just who I am sometimes. I do. Like, that's who I am when I'm triggered. I have that bravado thing, and that part of me that wants to reject that part of me or hide it from public consumption is trying to see so that I can seem more spiritual. You know, it's like nice to sit here and talk vulnerably about my feelings, but the reality is I can't do that until I've already run around the house like a lunatic. So anyway, thanks for letting me unpack that, because
just the last thing I want to say about it too is that it's really interesting to I think it was good. It just brought up a lot of like maybe some insecurities in you that you had to play out, and it's cool to actually just play it out in public and then figure it out as you go, and then be able to go back and unpack it and be more honest with it. But then the idea that like I think it's hard for a lot of people right now is that if they have some kind of public facing thing where they talk on a mic and they are sharing their own experiences in an effort to try to like help, or they just enjoy it, the desire to never hurt someone and like have it only be positive is that it's literally impossible. And so there is this aspect that like it is always going to trigger somebody, anything you say at any point.
Yeah. Because
somebody else is at a different perspective and at a different experience, and they might get triggered by when you bring up, something that should not be of a negative effect, but like to them it is because of their experience. And so I think that, again, it's just back to this like artistic thing. This is art, and the way that we're talking and sharing our experience in a compelling way and using metaphor, and then also having it to try to be some kind of wisdom sharing that helps people. Just like music is for some people and isn't for others, like no matter what you do, even if you're being vulnerable and honest, it's going to hurt. Someone is going to get hurt.
Right.
And
I hate that.
The seeking, I know, it's like, and it's part of this like weird initiatory thing. Like we don't want to be honest because sometimes that's going to hurt someone, but that's the only thing to do, is be as like honest and compassionate as possible. And if it hurts someone, still trying to show up compassionately for that. But at the end of the day, it's like, that was me, and I'm sorry you got triggered by it, but that's your thing. And so the desire to try to make it always perfect and not hurt anybody causes us to homogenize and actually not be as honest and vulnerable.
Right.
That's like where my people pleasing always showed up, is I just didn't want to hurt anybody. And I was terrified to hurt anyone. And I had seen time and time again, like by me just being myself, it was hurting someone. So therefore I would close that down and try to tactfully say the right thing. When really what I needed to do is just like be more honest and still have compassion and be able to like hold space for somebody getting triggered, but knowing where the line is that it's like, that's not my fault necessarily. Right. That's your response. And so I think the more, when we do have public expressions, it's like having to really embody that and understand that, like, no matter how hard I try to do something honest and real, that is going to innately like trigger and hurt someone somewhere. And in a macro sense, it's kind of can be positive because it's helping them process something that, if they have the capacity to, look at themselves in that scenario, they might be able to get a lesson and learn and be able to let go of what they were triggered by. But from the place of expressing ourselves to try to figure out how to accept that that's always going to be an aspect, is like when I'm showing up and being honest and being myself, that will hurt somebody somewhere. And if I try to avoid that completely, it does dim down the individual expression. And I think that's moving backwards and slowing down the process of figuring out who we are and how to show up and, kind of be of service to people.
Yeah. And that was the part where I feel like I went back, and I think this might be connected to Pluto in Capricorn versus Pluto in Aquarius, because I mean, you were with me for the entirety of that experience. It was so bad that I had a deep, deep anxiety every single time I put an episode out. And I mean, I was so hyper focused on the filter and everything. And I think we've talked about this on here. It's like why we couldn't make a podcast, because I was so self-censoring. And I think it seems like, I mean, I have a lot of things astrologically going on, but it seems like as soon as Pluto circled back into Capricorn, that I guess it's going back over the parts, whatever is happening there in my chart or whatever for me. We went back into that energy, and suddenly this freedom that I had been feeling, and like I had conquered this or whatever. And this is just how it is, right? We heal in a spiral. I get it. But like with this episode, had all of that anxiety. And when I put it out, and I have just felt unsafe since. And part of it is like, sometimes when people don't like what I say, as long as I feel like I communicated it clearly, which I didn't in that episode, and that I believe what I said, it's a lot easier for me to stand in that if I'm being honest. But a lot of like the last few years, I wasn't honest, like the election time last year. I believe that voting's a ritual in which you hand your energy over to like service to other thing. It is a ritual. And I got like swept up in the, that's a privileged take, and you just don't care about other people's experience or whatever. And so I kind of like gaslit myself 4 years ago to participate in something where not for a second did I actually believe any of that. It like, I know what I know to be true. Your perspective can be different, but like, I know that this is a ritual in which people hand over their agency, and that it's a deeply like, it's an energetic thing. And I maybe have already said that on here before. I know that. And I've sat with that for a really long time. But I wanted to appear as if like, it bothered me that other people felt like that was a privileged take, and it bothered me that, that other people said I'm bad if I don't care. And so I went, okay, well, I'll do it. And for the last 4 years, I've dealt with the consequences of having participated in a ritual that I know is deeply disempowering to myself and others.
And that's a negative aspect of like when we are trying to avoid conflict or void, we'll do things that we actually fundamentally don't agree with and know on a deep level it's not something we should do, but we'll do it to perform for somebody else to avoid being seen as something. It's actually, it can become dangerous.
And so now I've sat with the grief of like, what, because when you do that, you put your energy in to be used by proxy, and that's my belief. And if you don't believe that, that's fine. But like, there's an emotional theater that takes place to make you think that you're choosing between this or that, but this or that are actually the same thing. And what you're actually doing is like, I am consenting and I am giving my energy over to this egregore, this entity, to do what it wants. And so that means... For 4 years. And you renew the contract every 4 years. And when that entity chooses to go out and commit horrific acts with my energy, I have to sit with that for I'm fucking...
You've supported it.
Counting down the days until my contract is up, and never a fucking again. And if you believe that that's real, and you believe that you're going to be hurt because this or that, even though, trust me, you're not picking who's your fucking...
Daddy.
Your theater mate, you're like the head of the play or whatever the fuck, then that's yours to sit with. And it does bother me. Not as much now, but it does bother me to have people think that I'm like half-ass making decisions based on like some privilege or what. Like that's, and then I sit with the discomfort of people not liking me or thinking that I'm bad or whatever. But I tried it the other way. I not only participated in that ritual while knowing better, I went on other people's podcasts and tried to talk them into doing it. And I just can't express to you the heaviness and the grief of having betrayed my own knowing what is right and that's really when I kind of started to hide, like, because I felt so disconnected from my own truth for a while. Because I was overwhelmed with this, like, and I had never experienced anything like that, but it was like kind of this, like, if you're going to talk into microphones and like have people listen to you talking to microphones, you have a deep responsibility to what? To put forth a truth that isn't even yours. You know, it was a lot for me to like separate and sort through while I had a neurological illness. And where I landed on it is like I talk about certain things into microphones. I talk about self-empowerment. I talk about the transition of the awakening and how like you can feel crazy and it can be isolating, and the changes of the energy and the shifting into the new game. I talk about the things that I'm interested in, and that's my department. And if there are other aspects of reality that you think are really important and I don't talk about them, there's other people to talk about them. I don't know. It seems really simple now, but it's crazy the role that the nervous system played, because it seems like everything turned around for me when I did nervous system work, which I think was literally when Pluto went into Aquarius. Maybe not, but I just felt it's deeply unsafe, deeply volatile. I don't know, scary to have like thousands of versions of you out there existing in other people's reality. It just felt like they were going to show up and like burn me at the stake or something. And I really thought I'd worked through that, but I look back on where was I emotionally? Why did I have such an emotional reaction to that comment? And it really was, I'm in a low state because I'm recovering from this illness, so it's not like I was in my highest expression. And it was the exact like framing of that comment is my worst nightmare, which is like, look what you've done to the people, you know? And so I love it. Thank you, Ken Walker, for being a mirror. Sorry for fucking ragging on you. I was like trying to roast Ken. I wasn't like, And then I was trying to shit on the New Age movement. And I'm not sure that I communicated all of that. But at the end of the day, just like everything else, that was like ultimately we're just shadowboxing our own stuff. And that's my stuff. And maybe because we are at election time again, and that's where I feel like I really kind of started to lose myself. I wonder if that's not like, I'm not revisiting that energy a little bit. Although I'm not feeling that about the election at all.
I'm revisiting weed.
Yeah, that's interesting. You want to talk about that?
The desire to smoke weed again. For those of you who don't know, I had a very great relationship with Mother Marijuana for a long time. And it was really helpful and beneficial. But then it got to a point where it was actually not helpful to me. And for me, I had to oscillate on and off of it for a while to figure out exactly what it was. I was in denial. But had a lot of benefits from separating it from my daily life because I was a daily avid user of it. And a lot of that was through this Pluto Capricorn thing previously. And
we're talking like 3 to 4 blunts to the face by yourself a day.
Very heavy user. And it was highly productive on it. Like I could do anything with it except talk clearly and enunciate properly and like follow a through line, a thought. So it's not great for podcasting, but for making art and then also just for healing a lot of the shit I was going through. It was such a friend. But so I had to get to that like next phase of figuring out how to be creative and be the way I wanted to be without it. And that was quite a process. And I got a lot of benefits from it and have been, not really pulled back to it for a long time until we went back into this Pluto Capricorn thing. And then it slowly snuck up. I started dreaming that I was high all the time and hiding it from people and like constantly making sure I had enough. And it's like this anxiety that was always with me. But I've realized it's because I'm uncomfortable with whatever's going on right now astrologically. And that was always the fix before that would help me get through it. And so there's been this strong bubbling desire to just go back to it, even if it was just temporary to get through this kind of portal. But if I have learned anything in life, that's also this is like a time for a little bit of discipline and to get the lesson and not go back and make it easy, is to just try to sit with it and get through it. I hope that's what it is, that it's tied to this Capricorn Pluto thing. So we got till like November 2nd or something, November 6th.
I want to say it's the end of November.
Oh, fuck. Okay, well, a little bit longer.
Yeah, because some interesting things about you and weed are you're so different when you're smoking weed, in that when you're smoking weed, you wake up at 7:00 in the morning and you are very busy. And it's also a lot easier. Like if you're smoking weed, I could be like, hey, can you help me build a shelf in here? And you can like get into it.
Yeah.
And you are so different when you're not smoking weed that I think this is a tool. If weed had this impact on me, I would have a really hard time giving it up, because I think what it is that weed makes it really easy for you to make yourself do things you don't want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I still have that like productivity equals good programming that we have from the cross of planning, right? So the fact that you can get so much shit done, and that we're like right now we're both having a hard time getting to bed at night and then sleeping late. Neither one of us like to sleep late. It's not fun to wake up and your day is kind of already over. It's like the kids are, and then we're both really struggling with energy. And so if I'm being honest, if I had a substance that this does not work for me with weed at all. Like weed just makes me think everyone's going to die. if there was a substance I could go buy and then all of a sudden I'm just popping out of bed at 7:00 in the morning and chores are fun and everything else, like I would have a really hard time giving.
That's why it was so hard for me.
I'm not trying to sell it to you right now.
Yeah, I know. It's like, do you want me to just go to the shop?
And as your partner who has a few projects that need to get done, it has crossed my mind.
I'll take one for the team. I'll do it. It's fine. It's fine.
So I think but there are it's like cyclical, right? So when we first met, you smoked a shit ton of weed. And the fact that you were even remotely coherent while on that much weed, I've never met anyone who smoked that much weed.
It just resonates with certain people. I know other people like that like daily wake and bakers, and they're productive, happy. And that's how it was for me for a long time. I mean, that's the last half of being in the band. I didn't, I think I was realizing I didn't want to be there, but being high, I could do it. I could show up. And, I think it's some people that's how it is in their life and they want to keep it in it. That's fine. I think for me though, I had to finally get to a point where there was other parts of my life that were lacking by being high all the time, that I was missing, and I wasn't. I was just overlooking like how I was kind of being with people. Definitely the coherent speaking was like a problem at some point.
Well, in the hamster wheel aspect of it, right? Because it's like everything substance altering wise, it's diminishing returns.
Yeah. And I think I was also learning and trying to understand how kind of balance is the key to everything. And that there were so many benefits from it, but there had to be something by using it that much and running from any kind of conflict always to that. It definitely created a hamster wheel of like anxiety when I was running low, or I would have to travel somewhere and not have it. And it was dreadful to know that I was going to have to spend a day or two not being able to be high. And so that I started to realize that there was like something out of balance that I wanted to experiment and try to deal with. And that was going to involve, having to step away from it. And I had to do that, multiple times, oscillate on and off. But then realizing after getting away from it and going through like a detox, then having a lot more depth in areas that I didn't realize I was lacking, and starting to experience a little bit more of a like natural high in a frequency, and being able to get deeper, process things that I thought I had processed, but I hadn't fully processed. And so I think that's like, for me, that was the goal, that I could see that there was some imbalance with it. And I had to have some kind of discipline to get off of that, as beneficial as it was in so many parts of my life. I think I had finally gotten through the gauntlet of, nasty divorce, leaving the band, realizing I was like a chronic people pleaser, didn't know myself. And I wanted to find that balance. And once I had gone through that. And so, like I've said before, I think I would like to, at some point in my life, get to a place where I can use it more ritualistically and kind of responsibly, creatively. I think it's an amazing tool, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. I could sense if I like started to do it again, I would fall back into a very quick habit of daily use. But I think that's just where I'm at. I'm in that like growth process of really finding the balance by finding out who I am and how to show up without it, for a while, until I get to a point where it's just something that, like I said, is a little bit more intentional and ritualistic as far as using it creatively or trying to explore deeper parts of consciousness. Use it more like a medicine, not just a daily coffee,
Yeah, like an escape, like the difference between enhancement and escape, right?
And it's the only way I figured that is I had to be like brutally honest with myself. It was like really hard because I was in denial, and like there was so much benefit. But if I was really honest and like trying to be objective about it, it's like being able to access certain places of my consciousness and emotions without it was dreadful and seemed impossible to me. But I had to like really dig through a bunch of little hurdles I was putting in the way to make that not the case, you know,
Right.
believing that I was actually processing deep emotions and trauma while high, because you can kind of, like, you can, with the mind, you can kind of access certain places that you normally have boundaries up. It's like the great boundary dissolver. It's
Like,
what's so
is
beautiful about
objectivity, because you're not like, oh, these birds keep flying into the window, because you're not so emotionally caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's really helpful. But when I finally was just brutally honest with myself, I was like, yeah, dude, you're running constantly from something that can only be accessed soberly.
Yeah. Well, my favorite description of weed specifically as a substance, there's a cardinal just like repeatedly trying to...
Yeah, we should talk about that momentarily, just briefly. What is I've heard from many people that say cardinals are this kind of symbol of people that have passed or death, and that they like can come through the spirit of a cardinal sometimes. And so when a cardinal shows up, it's usually a loved one trying to communicate something. This goddamn cardinal has been coming and banging into windows for about 2 weeks. Not like it's like, I thought maybe it's like, oh, it's just looking, it's trying to nest somewhere or in fall. Maybe it's trying, but it's as if it's trying to get in and hang out and talk or do something.
It's actively behind you right now doing that. That freaks me out, because the morning I think we found out that the about the miscarriage, I was in the bathroom, and then a cardinal just came and sat outside the window before we found out. And I was like, oh, what's this mean? Like magic, whatever. And then we went and found out that
that symbolism.
Yeah. And then
yeah, if anybody knows more about it, leave it in the comments. But I think
it's
oh Jesus.
It's so loud that I came in the other room. Like,
maybe we should open the window to see if he comes in.
I'm like, let her in. What do you got? What's going on?
There have been some deaths like in the periphery of our lives. Not anybody immediately, but my mom had a friend die just recently, and she was just here. She's the one who first noticed the cardinal. And I told her, and she was like, yeah, I don't know if I believe that. But
there's also a woodpecker that I would like to find a different fucking thing to peck besides our house.
Yeah,
I guess that's an advantage of vinyl siding, right? Woodpeckers don't destroy it.
Yeah, the only advantage of vinyl siding.
I didn't mean to get you started on vinyl siding.
It's a fucking atrocious, like horrible part of our culture. Vinyl siding.
So we can't open the window, right? We can't let it in. I've never seen anything like that.
That one, I think I can open that. That window doesn't have a screen on it. But we've got cats in here.
Yeah, and they're lined up waiting.
Maybe I'll just shut those doors, keep the cats out, and see if it comes in.
I've never seen a bird just like repeatedly fly into a window.
It seems to only be when I guess we don't know when we're not here, but like when we're in this room.
No, I came in the other room and was like, what is happening out here? Because it was banging continuously into the window. So only thing I could think is like if there's a reflection out there of the trees. So
no, she's trying to get in here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go open the door.
All right.
Start your planet thing.
No, I'm not going to start your planet thing. There's cats lined up at the bottom of the window, like, leave the pretty cardinal alone. Go scare the woodpecker. He has the window open and he's calling the bird. Now she's never going to come back.
All right. Let's test that. I mean, I guess I don't know what I'm going to do once it gets in.
Then we're just going to have a bird stuck in the house.
Maybe then it'll start talking to us.
Yeah, you think it's just going to start using words?
Yeah, it'll shapeshift into...
This is our own personal alien invasion. That just got rid of her probably, which means she probably is interacting with the reflection. Okay, we had to take a little break so I could go find my glasses.
She had to poop.
I fucking wish. Can you imagine spontaneous poops? That would be crazy. We would be in the new world.
The outer planets are bringing bowel movements.
Yeah, the outer planets are affecting the inner ring.
Oh God. That was quick, though.
Yeah, I gotta take that out.
Are you a comedian?
Used to be. A lot of throat clearing happening right now. Okay. So I've been doing my new favorite thing, which is using ChatGPT to cross-reference facts that I never have access to. Like, I don't have a lot of facts in my brain. I have vibes. And so I've been learning about the shifts of the outer planets that are happening, like starting kind of in a few weeks, and how the entire premise of reality is going to change as a result. Do you know much about this?
The bit that you've told me and the stuff that I kind of catch up on TikTok with some of the astrologers.
Okay, so you've got just a quick overview. You've got the moon, and I'm not an astrologer, and this is my own butchered version of everything. You've got the moon, it's changing signs every few days, right? So it's very fast moving energy. It kind of opens and closes like small cycles. Then you've got Mars and Venus. They change signs, I don't know, like about once a month or something. Sometimes they hang in there for a while. Mars is a driving force. Venus is, love, beauty, money, whatever. Quick moving, energy. If you're having a transit with one of those, it's relatively, quick. And then we've got Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter is expansion. It goes around, it stays in a sign for about a year. And then you've got Saturn that stays in a sign for about 2 years, 2.5 years. Jupiter's going to expand. Some people think it's about luck, whatever. Like right now it's in Gemini. So whatever you personally have in Gemini, it's being expanded. These are all like personal planets. These are affecting you when they move around. Getting to understand these planets and where they're at will help you kind of understand the premise of your personal life. Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. This is about karma, rules, systems. Saturn can be a bummer if you're trying to avoid what it wants you to learn. It wants you to grow up. It wants you to learn your lessons. It's currently in Pisces. It is also changing signs next year. So that's a longer, like you spend 2.5 years in those lessons. You're usually getting your ass kicked. If you are having a Saturn transit that's intense, you'll get your ass kicked for the first year. You usually learn the lesson, after the first year, and then you kind of perfect it. It's a great helper, teacher, but it is a little bit of a buzzkill. So we get into the outer planets. We've got Pluto, which rules death, transformation, rebirth. But what I want to talk about, what it rules today, is power. And then you've got Neptune, which rules creativity, escapism, the dream. What I want to talk about energetically, what Neptune feels like to me is the glasses that we wear for the time that Neptune's there. Pluto stays in a sign for, 15 to 20 years. And then Neptune stays in a sign, I don't know, it's been in Pisces for 13 years. I don't really know that much about how long they stay ordinarily. And then we've got Uranus, which rules like change and innovation and shakeups, pivots, tower moments. And it has been in Taurus since 2018. So fucking, what is that now? Like 6 years. So in November, now what these planets do is they are like the background frequency. They rule the video game, the premise of the video game. And the thing I've been trying to, the thing that the alien said to me, and that I'm drawn to that Robes book, and that I'm drawn to the human design stuff, is what those things are all saying is that, like, there is no human experience. There is no innate human experience. Like, we go like, well, what it means to be a human is love, or what it means to be a human is to work, or what it means to be a human is community. None of that's true. Those are all constructs. And we as humans are taken through, we are like in an aquarium, and we are experimenting, or we are being experimented on by our higher selves, however you want to look at it, by like, okay, well, what happens if we put this energy into the tank? And what happens if we put this energy into the tank? So these 3 outer planets, along with these big cycles, these 400-year cycles, and then these 12,000-year cycles, these are all experiments. And those background frequencies, I'm trying to stop starting one sentence and finishing with different things. All of these cycles, you know, the 15-year Pluto cycle, the larger cycle, those are all different experiments, different video games, right? And then, and none of them are good or bad, but we are going from one to another. So we think the last one was bad. We think everything they did there is bad, and everything we're going to do now is good. That's just normal. We're being conditioned by that background frequency. So all 3 of these outer planets. So the last time they changed, Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008. Then you had a break for 4 years. And then Neptune went into Pisces in like 2011, 2012. They go back and forth for a minute, so I'm just picking roundabout dates. And then you had another 5 years, and then Uranus went into Taurus. In the next 12 months, each of these planets will change. In relatively, I think a couple of them will retrograde back, but you are going to get introduced to a completely new video game. And the energies that they are leaving versus the energies they are going into is going, like, shit's about to pop off. And I think I'm excited for it, but I just want to talk about the different energies and the way that they're shifting, and then how the 3 of them are going to work together.
So are they going to be like contrastingly different? Like it's going to be such a, like, what are each one going into?
Yeah, man. Okay. So
I just really quickly too, I just want to throw this out because I thought of it. Every time you say Pluto, I'm always reminded of the fact that, like, I don't know how many years ago they tried to convince us that Pluto didn't exist. You remember that?
Yeah, no, it's not a planet, they say.
Okay.
And I ponder that a little bit, because this specific Pluto shift, I don't think it matters either way, because it's been, you know, these are just kind of map keys for us to know where the energy's going. But
I was just thinking, if they tried to make it like it doesn't exist, I guess it's different if they were just saying it's not a planet.
Yeah, they keep going back and forth on whether or not it's a planet.
It'd be interesting to try to get you to not pay attention to it, because it's such an important transition right now.
It's specifically the harbinger of the end of the system, which is really funny to me, because so it rules power. So once again, I just want to hammer home, like, I'm relatively new to learning astrology in the last 5 years or something, and I really can't understand any of this stuff unless I can match it to an energy that I have personally experienced. I am really bad at, like, teaching anything that I can't, like, touch in the ether. And so I've actually had astrologers on the podcast to talk about these outer planets before. I just really never connected to the energy. It didn't click for me until very recently, really, when Pluto went into Aquarius and then has just gone back into Capricorn. I'm like, oh, that's the feeling.
You can feel it, yeah.
That's the feeling. So now I can, like, and
I even recognize that feeling now.
Yeah, well, you should, with fucking a Capricorn stellium.
Yeah.
Capricorn sun, Capricorn rising, and a bunch of other shit. Saturn and, or no, you don't have Saturn and Cap, but
it felt so freeing compared to if it's been there since 2008 until, when was it? Did it go retrograde? It
went into Aquarius in January of 2024, and then it went retrograde back into Capricorn in September.
Yeah, and so there was that brief window where it was like, oh man, everything feels so easy and free and creative, and not as I feel like the previous time it was just like in the depths of transformation, like constantly.
Yeah. It and it's subtle. These are slow moving planets, so it's not like the day it hits. Although we do get some crazy events sometimes, but it's not like the day it hits. It's subtle, but. And you're probably too young. We've discussed this already, but you're probably too young to have really noticed in 2008, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, when I look back though, and I can see, I can like remember the feeling of a change. I mean, it's not like it was in 2008, but like from the experience that I had, not long after that, I had just a huge life change with the band taking off and all of these things that I went into a place of just constant tension and transformation.
Yeah.
But before 2008, that was it was much more fluid. Life was a little more flowy. But that could be, that was like kind of a coming of age.
Yeah, you were kind of just a little bit, you were a few years out of high school,
like
5 years out of high school.
26, 25, 26.
Yeah. So I think I was just old enough to catch it. And I was, I think I was like 31. I got married when I was 30. I got clean when I was 28, almost 29. And I had a real momentum going. I was really catching up pretty quickly to everyone else my age after having fucked off my 20s on drugs. But I was very disconnected from... I didn't know what the economy meant. Like, I dropped out of 9th grade. Like, I didn't know, when I hear people talk about the economy, I had not yet reached a point where, and my generation, a lot of my generation was like this. Like, we just weren't tuned into this stuff. It just sounded like things that boomers were into. And so I did not understand at all how my neighbor's money affected my money. I didn't get any of that. We didn't have social media talking about any of this stuff either. So I just hadn't been introduced to it. And my new husband and I moved to Portland. Both of our kids were there. We were both in recovery. We were trying to get our kids back. And the crash happened as soon as we got there, which was, I think, right before or right as Pluto's going into Capricorn. And a seriousness came over the realm. A seriousness in the way that Saturn is serious, in the way that Capricorn is serious. Kind of for no reason. A seriousness came over the realm that has been here since. And so the thing that I want to focus on here, because you can hear a million different people talking about the death and rebirth and stuff, but if you Pluto rules power. And the way, as I'm looking through all the experiences that we've had since 2008, the way that this planet feels like it works is it gives power to whatever that sign rules, and to its detriment if that sign doesn't know what to do with the power, right? So we just happen to, because we're ending the cross of planning, we're coming to the end of the systems, but Capricorn really would be the sign that rules the systems, the establishment, and also private equity. Okay, so, and I double checked this with ChatGPT. This was already the vibe I had, but ChatGPT also confirmed. So private equity would benefit. Private equity, I'm talking BlackRock, Vanguard, right? All of these things are going to benefit from basically getting a steroid dose of power since 2008. Now, what have they done with that power? They have written their own death certificate, because that much power into something that was already kind of innately corrupt or corruptible they've overplayed their hand since 2008. The beginning of Pluto in Capricorn started with most of us finding out what bullshit the stock market is. Nobody knew that they were packaging. Your average citizen did not know they were packaging mortgages and selling them as stocks or bonds or whatever the fuck. And they, were letting people buy houses that couldn't buy houses with these fucking adjustable rate mortgages, whatever. And so in that moment, there was so much outrage. We got Occupy Wall Street. We got people kind of pushing back. We got conspiracy movies about it. People started to understand. We got my favorite movie ever made, The Big Short. We started to understand the American dream is actually bullshit. I'm telling you, people who are not in your 40s, no one knew that. No one knew that. No mainstream people understood that the American dream was bullshit before that. Now, myself and other people in my generation, early X-Gen, were disillusioned with the American dream, in that it was just we just work and get married and have kids and just do what everyone else did and stay on this track. There was a lot of disillusionment. I think probably Pluto and Sagittarius brought that. But there was not, it was not common knowledge that this entire thing was absolute bullshit. People did not know that, okay? And people did not understand how corrupt it was. But then you get Bernie Madoff gets caught. It's like everyone's getting exposed for shit that they were able to do behind closed doors for probably like a long time, right? And so then you think the logical conclusion is going to be that's going to collapse. Like during Occupy Wall Street, I'm like, okay, we're headed towards that collapsing. But then what happens in through the crash that they created, they are able to consolidate power, buy up a bunch more real estate. Like every horrible thing that's happened to the collective in the US has like benefited them. I mean, the pandemic, we saw so many small businesses close. We saw private equity buy up all the real estate. If you want, what I think private equity is doing, because they also own all these awful new construction companies. I think that they bought up all of the single family homes that were older, and they're just holding them and forcing everyone into these houses that are gonna fucking have foundation issues in 5 years. And then they think they're just going to dump those houses back out. And they probably have them like Airbnb right now or whatever. Anyway, these guys have nonstop benefited from the consolidated power that Pluto in Capricorn has brought them. But here's the thing. They've only benefited because they've had that wind at their sails. And I think these guys, like, I do think the like consolidated power people, they know about astrology.
Yeah,
okay?
They have to.
And this is why they're building bunkers, because the beautiful thing about how all this works is the way that these signs are lined up. Pluto is moving into Aquarius, which is basically the opposite in a lot of ways. It has all of that. It represents like an older part of your life. So it has all the like wisdom and understanding that and it's not that Capricorns are bad. It's like, you know, there's a full spectrum. We also did a lot of cool things in that energy. So this is not like, I love Capricorns. I'm in love with a Capricorn. I've been in love with other Capricorn. I have a kid that's Capricorn. This is not like good or bad, dumb shit right now. We're just talking about like the video game and who's benefiting from where these planets are in the video game. So as we know, the cross of planning was really about building systems so that we could all collectively benefit from the infrastructure that the systems built. And there was a point, I guess, where that's true, although there was never equality. So, you know, it benefited people at a different, you know, to different degrees. And many people suffered under it. But that was the premise, and it's not good or bad. It's just like, what does it look like when everyone comes together to build infrastructure, a global infrastructure? And Capricorn really has a lot, like represents a lot of that. But the cross of Sleeping Phoenix doesn't give two fucks about infrastructure, systems, us coming together at all. It doesn't care about that. It cares about what can these individuals do? Like, how can these individuals innovate? You know, what kind of communities can the individuals build based on autonomy, like expression, art? This is why it's just like the alien said the future's about artists. And now I'm starting to see how that comes together. Okay. And because of that, we'll see the collapse of the systems. But at this point, who gives a fuck about the systems? Because they're so goddamn corrupt. They don't do anything other than serve some greedy fucks, right? So Pluto is going to an Aquarius, which is power to the people. And so all that wind at the backs of these private equity companies and these systems and these corporations is leaving them. And they're not going to have that fucking, you know, pizzazz. They're not going to have that wind at their sails. The wind is leaving their sails and going into the hands of the people. And what Aquarius wants to see is like an equalizing like power that is very decentralized. That's something I don't hear enough people talking about with Aquarius is that, you know, if you know Aquarius is, they do not like to be infringed on. They want everyone to be able to do their thing, but it's not going to be through, let's get everyone on the same page. You know, like my hope is, because we saw when Saturn was in Aquarius during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people trying, like, we had a lot of energy for trying to create new ways of doing things, but still mentally trying to get everyone on the same page. So I'm hoping Pluto there is going to get it through people's heads that live and let live has got to be like the foundation of this thing. We need to break up with each other.
Yeah.
Instead of like fucking arguing endlessly with people you don't agree with, you need to learn how to let them go do their thing. You do your thing, break into smaller groups, which I think we will see during Pluto and Aquarius. It's going to be here for a long time, 20 years or something. Okay. So Pluto goes into Aquarius. Hilariously, it goes there for good because it's retrograding in Capricorn right now. Hilariously, a couple weeks after the election, which I think is
so interesting.
It's so funny, right? And then it's gonna, take time, but this is where you're probably going to see a revolution. This is the energy that a lot of people feel like, I think why people feel like this is the age of Aquarius or whatever. I mean, I think we're in a 400-year cusp into the age of Aquarius, but when you're talking about huge cycles, 400 years that's not very long. So the one that I think is biggest is Neptune, which rules Pisces. Like that's its home. Has been in Pisces since 2011. Neptune, I want to say, is the dream. It is the dream that we're in. It's the illusion. It's the delusion. Neptune in Pisces is too much Pisces energy for too long, is my take as a Pisces sun and moon. I think that as a Pisces native, it's a little easier for me to operate in this energy, but I think that this energy is why, because it's we've been here for so long. This is why creatives feel like they're stuck in sludge. This is why everything feels like we're living in goo, like we're living in gelatin. You can't really move anything forward. Pisces is not an actionable energy. We got a lot of really good, important stuff from Pisces. I think the big, huge awakening was a result of Neptune and Pisces, because Neptune rules spirituality. And so and then Pisces is like, it's the in-between, right? It's the in-between death and rebirth, like in between lifetimes, right? Pisces is also like compassion and empathy. And so Neptune in Pisces, you're getting so much compassion and empathy. We've got too much empathy at this point. Like people do not know how to operate with this level of empathy. So much happened while it was there. This is where we started talking about rape culture, social justice became and I know some of you don't have a great relationship with that, but like people became aware of the experience of other people. We gained the ability to stand in other people's shoes, to see the internet equalized, social media equalized, and let us start understanding the experience of people across the world. These were all very necessary for the awakening of human beings. But we have now gotten to the point that the comment section on a video of a cat getting startled is people saying like you're doing animal abuse, and it's like, okay, guys, everyone's like, we got to lock our cats inside. We have to fucking publicly shame anyone who doesn't lock their cat inside. Like everyone's
come back to reality.
It's too much. It's too much. It's also largely ineffective. Pisces is not a ton of action. On the creative front, every art's been done. Right? We just feel like they're remaking the same movies, remaking the same music. All the artists that are like kind of conscious are like, I have a deep longing to make something new, but I can't find it. Pisces is the end of the zodiac. We're at 29 degrees, Neptune, I believe. Aries is the beginning. Aries is a child. Aries is brand new. Aries is action. It's ruled by Mars. It's like impulsive, like actionable energy. It's the child. It's got all that energy and excitement. How I have felt for the last couple of years, and is this perimenopause, is this whatever, but how I have felt for the last couple of years is like I miss that part of me that just had energy to go do stuff, to just like throw shit at the wall and see what sticks and like move things forward. And I think I am, also perimenopause, but I think I am, as someone with a sun and moon and Pisces and already like a lot of that energy in my chart, as it's like slogging through the end of Pisces, it's like, it's goo. It's very difficult to like do a sprint in gelatin, you know, and that's what it feels like. And then it is the end. It is the end of a big cycle. And so anyway, I think when Neptune hits Aries, and I think it goes back and forth for a minute, we might get a civil war, because it is like, you know, you got to take the good with the bad. It is a lot of impulsivity in that energy.
In Aries.
But it's going to get the energy moving, and it's going to bring a lot of actionable energy to Aquarius, which is like, wants to figure this shit out. Like Aquarius is like,
feels
let's
like
figure
you have
this
to
out.
kind of go through a gauntlet of some kind of difficultness to get to that, right? So Civil War does sound like it's in the cards as something that's like, you know, a negative kind of necessity to get to the liberation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to be like, if there is a civil war, it's going to be just like everything else. It's like, over here, they're going to have a natural disaster. Over here, they're having a civil war.
Yeah,
I would
it's
assume
like,
it's probably like in the cities.
You don't have to partake.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it just, you know, I think when we look back at like the way that cities were burning and stuff in 2020, and, you know, people running into Capitol buildings and shit, like, we may frame that as a civil war in the future. I don't know that while they were in the Civil War, they were like, this is the Civil War. I don't know anything about history, but, you know, we haven't gotten far enough away from what's already happened in the last 5 years to really know how we're going to frame it. And like I say always, it's probably going to be framed differently by different groups of people. But anyway, it is a lot more energy moving. And so the last one, and then I want to talk about how the three of these work together. The last one is Uranus, which rules like sudden change, I think innovation. I see Uranus as it like comes in and it just shakes the shit out of the plant, and whatever leaves weren't going to survive anyway. They go, you know, and so you see a lot of things falling apart, but and some people are afraid of Uranus, but I'm like, but it's all the things that needed to change, right? And it's the same thing with like, because we are shifting from an age that probably had a lot more Capricorn energy, in that the cross of planning has some Capricorn vibes, into the age of something that's going to have a lot more Aquarius energy, in that the cross of sleeping Phoenix you would describe as like Aries Aquarius. I would, like, that's the vibes. What Pluto transformed in Capricorn, like, it's going to be different, I think, in Aquarius. I do think we will get too much of like, I think we will start out Pluto and Aquarius finding out what is not effective activism, or what is not effective and I think that Saturn and Aquarius showed us that, like, what is not effective. We end up extremely divided rather than recognizing we're having different experiences, right? So anyway, Uranus has been in Taurus, which I don't know a ton about Taurus, but it rules like safety, security, whatever, right? And so what has happened is, you know, now most people can't afford a home, right? Everything that we thought was the American dream has become like completely shattered. Any illusion of the American dream has become completely shattered since 2018, right? And so the thing's falling apart for a lot of people. And even for the people it's not falling apart for, it's becoming obvious it's not long, right? So we got people prepping and shit because it's like, okay, well, this thing's not everything we ever thought was our safety and security, anything we ever put our feet in, anything we ever put stock in. You should be aware by now in the last 5 years that none of that's guaranteed. We're having hurricanes in the fucking mountains. You know, the price of bread is 10 times what it was 2 years ago. Like everything's up for negotiation. And I think that's what Uranus and Taurus brought. And I think because the propaganda of the cross of planning was, if we all just sacrifice ourselves to build this infrastructure, we will have safety, we will have security. That was the premise of reality. Safety and security comes from your own personal intuition in the future. And so Uranus did more destruction in Taurus than I personally believe is going to be its mission in Gemini. I think that, and this is just my take, not to say there won't be destruction, but that Gemini rules communication. Gemini and Aquarius both have like kind of a tech bend. If I had to guess what's going to happen, there will be a series of decentralizing, and not like crypto that can be hijacked, but maybe like crypto. I don't know. I think more AI. There will be some equalizing technological advances that will not be able to be gatekept. And then ways that we communicate with each other. The thing about Gemini is it's mutable. And that means it's open to hearing other perspectives. I think part of the reason that we have been stuck and not able to move forward is because everyone is locked in this kind of rigid ideology of their side and really kind of unwilling to listen to the other side. And as someone who listens to everyone and then just forms my own opinion, I promise you guys are all misunderstanding each other. Like literally, you're half propagandized. If you're like locked into like paranoia about people, but you won't listen to a full hour of them talking because you think that you're giving them a platform or whatever, you're propaganda. And I promise you guys are all misunderstanding each other and believing psychotic shit about each other, and that everyone's actually relatively close to each other and wanting the same things. You would have to listen to each other to do that. I think Uranus coming in to understand that, to know what I'm talking about. The paranoia that everyone has about each other. My hope is that Uranus going into Gemini, it feels true, is there's going to be a lot of like communication, but also like Gemini likes to have its mind changed. You know, Gemini energy wouldn't. Now, I know that everyone is just thinking about the worst Gemini they've ever fucking met when I'm saying this. Don't think about the people. I'm talking about the energy. It's a mutable energy that's down to communicate. I think we might see an uptick of podcasting, even though it seemed like it was going to die. But a renewed interest and curiosity in what other people have to say, which is absolutely necessary if you want something different than what we've had in the past. Everyone who thinks they're going for revolution or change right now is actually just wanting to have their thing be the dominant thing. Yeah. Like it's still so much of the same. You're trying to get the same thing. You're trying to get a new thing with the same thing. Now, think of Capricorn energy, low and slow, right? Think of Pisces energy, primordial goo. Think of Taurus energy. Nobody knows. Tauruses are not like be bopping around super fast. Also, you've got both of those are Earth, and it's Capricorn, and this might not make a lot of sense for people who don't like understand these energies, but Capricorn and Taurus is Earth energy, grounded, okay, slow moving, methodical, premeditated, okay, and then you've got, and also homebodies, and then you've got, well, I guess Capricorn would rather be at the office, and Taurus would rather be home. And then you've got Pisces, which is just, you know, in the ether, just float like ketamine, you know, ketamine is Pisces energy, right? What's happening now is Pluto is leaving Earth, going into air. Air is fast as fuck. Air is like mental energy, innovation, whatnot, like like very fast. Okay. Uranus is leaving that Earth and going into Gemini. Once again, air again. And then Neptune is leaving water, and which is all emotions and feeling, and going into fire, which is creative, inspired. But then also think, what do these energies do? Earth is Earth. It's grounded. It's pretty safe, right? And then we've got water, which, you know, water's been showing us what it's capable of, but we've had like grounded and feelings. And now we're going into thoughts and fire, right? We're going into, and that air feeds the fire, right? Because that's what the elements do. So
this is like a perfect setup for like a artistic renaissance, a revolution. Yep. Decentralized. I mean, it makes so much sense. Going
it's everything we felt was coming, but I didn't. This is what I love about Human Design 2027 stuff. I love finding a container a left-brained like description for what I already felt was coming. This is the opening, 2025 is the opening ceremony to the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix.
Yeah, it's felt like that. But it is interesting to get a different context, a container to put it in it that validates it and kind of gives more nuance to it.
Right.
Because I like the way you've been unpacking each energy and what it like, how it works, how the energy moves, and then thinking contextually in the society where that's going to show up and how it's going to present itself. That like that it makes sense. Because in my head, I'm just imagining there has to be some kind of, at least creatively, I feel like there needs to be innovation in the tools and the ability to be creative in a different way, because we do feel like we've gotten to the end of possibilities. A lot of the times when you get, like as a musician, if you get a new synth or a new, like some kind of new machine in the studio, it like changes your ability. It opens up so many opportunities.
Right.
And so it feels like not only for artists and creatives, but then just anywhere in reality, like we're on the brink of some technology that feels like it will change everything and be some modality that isn't corruptible or is you can't hijack and gatekeep, that then, you know, it liberates so many aspects of the human experience. So it's cool to see how I feel like there's a couple rabbit holes I want to go down after this, just to like think about how each of those signs, where it could potentially show up, you know?
Yeah. So a few points I want to make. Don't let me forget why most of the scenarios people think are going to happen are they're assuming that they are going to happen based on, let me just say that one before I forget the same. So a lot of things that people think are going to happen. So you think that some people think we're going to get pushed back into a Christian theocracy or something. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's so fucking obvious that it's not going to happen. I want to put my head through a wall. It doesn't matter who gets in office. It's not going to happen. Nothing about the energy is going that direction at all. What probably will happen is hyper religious people, when we start to split off into smaller groups, will create some sort of like fundamentalist. There will be a lot of like fundamentalist groups who will learn to just go be fundamentalists with their friends. Okay?
Do you think that's out of fear of the kind of like quick moving open space, like something that's like foreign?
I think everyone's trying to put the cross of planning genie back in the bottle.
Right.
Or I guess it would be cross of sleeping Phoenix.
Fear of moving
on both
into
sides, right? So you got some people on the right. I don't identify with either of these groups, so don't at me about anything. You got some people on the right who are like, they believe that the human experience is quote unquote traditional family values and God. By the way, the belief in God and religion is a construct of the cross of planning. We did not interact with religion the way that we and fundamentalism the way that we have in the last 400 years. I've been researching that as well. We are deeply conditioned by the constructs, and we think and we think different aspects of them are the human experience. So a lot of the people on the right feel like it's the end of the world. That's another thing. Like the deep feeling that is the end of the world is coming from all of those three planets being around 29 degrees, because that is the beginning of us. Pluto and Capricorn is going to feel different than the end, because each of those degrees means something. And so all of these like outer planets being at the end is giving the sensation that everything's over, that even we feel, right? Like I'm obviously not bought into some end of the world scenario, but
because it kind of is the end of an energy. It's the end of a background frequency, which misinterpreted can be like, oh, it's the end of the world. It's the end of life.
And it is overlapping with the end of the cross of planning. And then we are finishing a harvest cycle of 25,000 years or whatever the like bigger cycle is. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of the things that people think are coming, like, so then, you got some people think we're going to go back into a Christian theocracy because you have a lot of people Christians talking about that, like wanting that. They're not going to get that. The reason they're not going to get that is because it's not how energy works. And maybe in the past people were forced through crusades or whatever to do things. Like, I don't think people understand the sheer amount of humans on the planet right now that are much more awake and conscious than they've ever been before. And where we're going is like individuality. So nobody's going to get like, and also people tend to get dominated into things at this point in history. Everyone will walk into things willingly and it might be good for them. So anyway, the other side, believes that there's like World Economic Forum's going to force everyone into 15-minute cities. I have a lot of thoughts on that. But here's the thing. If they do ever successfully create 15-minute cities, the people who are living in them are going to want to live in them. And I know hundreds of people that if you said your bills will all be paid, you could do whatever you want, and you never have to leave this 15-minute area where all your friends live, and you get a basic income and you just get to fuck around and do art. You can't leave the 15-minute city because it's not good. But this is it. I know hundreds, if not thousands of people through my extended, like people I see on the internet that would sign up for that, and that would be their utopia. Mm-hmm. They're not going to drag you out of the fucking country and shove you into a 15-minute city, dude. Now, would I go there? No. I don't want what comes with that, But there are lots of people for whom that is an ideal thing. So if that did happen, every fucking square inch of the world is not going to be a 15-minute stay.
Right.
Why? Because the concentrated, centralized power there's no gas in the tank for that. And so there are a lot of people I know that don't want to own a car. They want public transportation. They want to be able to walk to everywhere they go. Like that, if that is being created, it is being created for the people that fucking want it. And the only way you're going to get drugged there and end up there is because you're fucking obsessed with it. And so you're good. Like the world is huge and it's decentralizing. And there's going to be lots of different types of experiences available for people to have. And some people don't realize that your obsession with raising awareness about it or preventing it is tethering you to it in a way that like you don't have to be tethered to it. That's a whole podcast. Anyway, a lot of the things that people see have been happening with where the planets have been. And I think a lot of what Neptune and Pisces has done is we've just been stuck in a state of looking at what we don't like and not being able to do anything about it. So Neptune going into Aries, I think, even though I think a lot of the actions will be harebrained in the beginning, I think that the initial shift, I think, is going to be very chaotic. I think things are going to be very chaotic for the next 5 years. People who are very tethered to the security of the systems are going to be experiencing a pretty apocalyptic thing. If you've already been moving your energy out of the systems, you can still be working a corporate job and be moving your energy out of the system in that you're not believing that this is going to be what you do for the rest of your life, right? Just being somewhat braced or aware of the shifts is enough. You don't have to make changes if it's not organically happening. But the people who are very like, I sometimes hear people talking about their 401k and I'm like, and they're 30 and I'm like, oh, babe, you poor thing. You know what I mean? They're making all their decisions based on where they can get the best medical insurance. And I'm like, you bless your heart. They're going to have a rough time because they didn't get the memo. Right. And then people who are obsessed with getting everyone on the same page, which is the trying to put the sleeping phoenix back in the bottle, which is how you see a lot of more of the left, I guess, still they're not trying to go back to family values. They're expanding what a relationship means, what identity means, whatever. That's all cross the sleeping phoenix. But then they're trying to make everyone else assimilate, not everyone, but a lot of people on the left are like, oh, but we all have to be on the same page about this. That's very cross the planning. We are not all going to be on the same page about dick. Okay. So the other thing about Aries is it's the individual. It is the energy of the individual. We have seen a lot more dehomogenization in the last couple of years because the nodes have been in Aries. So we've gotten a little bit of that Aries medicine up front. Now the nodes are going to go into Pisces, and that almost feels like to keep a foot in that energy. So we will have some of that, etheric compassion to get us through, because Aries is very about me. Like, and I think we need that. to decondition from us in a way that hasn't actually celebrated the individuals within the group. That's what Aquarius is going to be more focused on. Like, I think in the shadow, it can be like we need to do whatever for the greater good, but that feels more old energy to me. It's kind of like, how do we honor all of these individuals while working together as an ecosystem? I don't even think people can conceive what this means yet. And I wish I could like draw a picture of it in my head and help people.
No, I think you're doing a great job of explaining it. This is blowing my mind. I feel like I'm at school. Astrology is always hard for me to kind of really like grab onto because I don't know all of the planet's energies fully. I know a couple of them, but no, I think you're explaining it well. And it lines up with a lot of the stuff we've talked about on previous podcasts, just about cross of planning, going into the cross of sleeping Phoenix. And I think just in general, the like kind of overarching theme in the spiritual worlds right now, that this is a pivotal time. It's a time that's, got many transferences of cycles, like the 25,000 year, all these other bigger ones and smaller ones, that it is an exciting time. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people say, is that it's like, this is a great time to be alive. But then on one hand, you can look at it as like, you can be one perspective and be like, this is the shittiest shit I've ever experienced. This is painful. This is, the corruption is like unstoppable. Like, how do you stop any of this? You
Right.
can feel very disempowered. But that makes sense when you're talking about it in this way, where it's the end. We're like really squeezing out the sponge of everything else that can be pulled from that energy. Which, when you look at any of the people that are in power, that's what it feels like. They're just grabbing every last thing they can, because they've got to be aware that the energy is shifting into something that's not going to be compatible with the way that they've showed up. And that's where it's also obvious to be able to see their hands being played. Like, you can see what's going on because they're making moves so irrationally to grab whatever else they can, that it's like, it's so blatantly obvious.
Yeah, to me, it seems very obvious they know what's coming.
Yeah. And I also, in my head, I was thinking when you were talking, like, it's interesting how some of the programming from the last 400 years, people that couldn't break out of that, like, they can perfectly set up via the programming of getting people to not know how to self-empower and autonomize and need daddy to do something for them, that they have something perfectly set up for that. The 15-minute cities, the kind of casting your vote, even though you don't believe in it, none of this is going to work out for you, but like, you're programmed to do that it does allow them to kind of squeeze out that last bit, via the programming of people not being able to kind of think for themselves. People that are still invested in their 401k or whatever, and like putting all of that in, and then have it drop and not be able to do anything. Well, their only option is going to be a 15-minute city, or something to.
Yeah, it really depends on how the person is. And I don't even know if the 15-minute city thing is real, but I just like, I look
just
at
as an example, it's like, it's showing up like that kind of effort.
Yeah.
know?
And what I see more of than actual like proof that 15-minute cities are happening is like, there is a large section of society who wants that, and not even like subconsciously wants it. Like, they're literally like, there's the way the towns are set up where you need a car is stupid. And
they want ease. They want a handout. I mean, that's like the sickness of our culture right now, is that like everyone just wants help, or they want somebody to do their work, to do things for them
and that's a little cross of planning, to be honest. That's a little it's pretty cross of planning. Cross of planning will have you believe that, we like boomers and stuff, like, oh, I did my share or whatever. But like, in the cross of planning, you had one job. You were the mechanic, you were the carpenter, you were the dishwasher, you were the CEO, you were whatever, and everything else is done for you. So the cross of planning is actually deeply like, someone else watches my kids, someone else does my hair, someone else whatever. This cross of sleeping Phoenix is like DIY.
Yeah. So
I really don't even know, like you can't get someone to come work on your house now. They'll do such a fucking horrendous job unless they are unless they're an artist, right? So we've learned the hard way. Like, we have to just learn. You're better off watching a YouTube video, learning how to do it yourself and just doing it yourself, because the passion to be an employee or to do a job, if it's not artistic to you, you won't give a fuck about it moving forward, right? And so everyone will have to become kind of a jack of all trades. This is where the kind of manifesting generator energy that will come in a few years is going to help people, because everyone's going to be able to do a little bit of everything. Where the cross of planning had you like focused as one thing very well. It was all about skill, right? So anyway, I think that, I don't know that I agree that what draws people to the 15-minute cities is just that they don't want to do anything. I think that the vast majority of people under the age of 35 do not have enough cross of planning conditioning. They're orphans right now energetically, because the cross of sleeping phoenix really is, you only do things that bring you fulfillment and things that help you survive. And so when the system falls, you get together with a small group of people, and whoever's passion it is to figure out a way that we all have water, that's what that person does. And whoever passion it is to, build the structures, that's what that person does. And whoever, and it's like, you build your communities based on like, how can everyone here be authentic and we have everything that we need, is how I think it will be in the future. We have nothing like that right now. And so I think the idea of going, for people who are like just conditioned enough by the cross of planning to think that everything's supposed to be just done by someone else, but also I don't have a desire to work, or I just want to do art or whatever. I think that's who it'll be appealing to.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm saying. It's just the 15-minute city idea of, we're going to set everything up for you, which we're already in. You can order anything on Amazon. You can order food to your house. You can order groceries to your house. It's all about like ease. The programming of that, it just makes sense to me that's why they're creating little catch-alls like that, because people have been conditioned that way, that haven't been able to get out from underneath it. That's how you get them to go into that. If you're autonomizing or you're open and you're looking to kind of, you're inspired by like a new world, like you can't get those people into that. You would never be able to do it, especially if the background frequency is actually enhancing that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think just people drawn to cities. I mean, people who are drawn to like New York City were always fascinating to me, because they're like okay with living in a very small space, often which has like black mold or whatever in it, and they're paying a lot of money just to be able to like go downstairs, be able to walk to the bodega, to be able to walk to the restaurants, to be able to walk to the comedy shows. It's where I spent most of my time in New York City, was doing comedy, and to be a part of something that was like buzzing and like alive like that, and to have access to each other and socializing and stuff. A lot of people like cities, usually younger people, but a lot of people like that aspect of cities, and this kind of offers it. And then on the counterpoint, we have whatever that weird Stepford place was in Franklin, Tennessee, that we'd get like, they had a couple good restaurants.
I forget the name of it, but the one that's bigger than that, it's the one in Florida where it's like it's
and they all ride like golf carts around, right?
Yeah, and they like literally have everything you could ever want there. There's stores. It's essentially like the beginnings of the 15-minute city idea.
Yeah, so it's like the thing that doesn't sound chill about the 15-minute city is that allegedly they won't let you, and these already exist in other countries, right? Does this already exist somewhere, or is this an absolute fucking
I think there's small models of
theory,
it. Yeah.
Pipe dream?
Well, and like the thing in Florida is essentially that.
But you're allowed to leave.
Yes,
right.
You're allowed to leave. But
so
it's so captivating. You actually don't need to, that you tend to start to live in a bubble, because there's like absolutely no reason to leave.
Okay, so that might be the future. Like if you take out the part where you're being surveilled at every moment, which is what a lot of the 15-minute city paranoia is about, right? If you take out the surveillance, the smart houses, I don't want my house hooked up to fucking Wi-Fi, and the fact that you can't leave it, we would actually love that. Our lifestyle would be conducive to that, in that, like, I don't want to live in a too close to other people, but like, we just go to the same fucking co-op and the same 3 restaurants. Like, imagine if they were all just kind of like in this neighborhood, we would rarely leave. And so I think some aspects of that, if you take the surveillance and the control and the centralized power, and if it was owned by the people, like the 15-minute city is owned by the members of the 15-minute city.
This is why I've always thought that, like, we're so close to it being like this utopic idea where every individual can create and do what they please and then also get their needs met, like with relative ease.
Right.
But the aspect is the control, the corrupted control, the subversive control. Like, you don't even realize you're being kind of monitored, and your perception of reality is being hyper controlled on the social media apps because of the algorithm. It's taking your information, and then the not allowing, like, the freedom of speech, not allowing certain things to come out. So I would love that whole idea if I could create and say whatever I want, and
Right.
and it not feel like I'm being controlled and taken advantage of in every fucking moment, that I have to, like, it's so subversive. I have to look out for it all the time and be aware that, like, certain things I'm viewing over and over again online is going to affect my search engine. It's going to affect the ability to see the contrasting sides. All of that is what is, like, I'm so fucking sick of. And I can see that it is just about, like, somehow removing that aspect of the culture that is so capitalistic hungry, it won't let go of any opportunity to take something from somebody else and trick them into giving it to you. Really, that's what's going on. It's not even taking. It's like we've been tricked to give over all of it.
Well, we need to kill our inner cop.
Yeah.
It's like,
because we've been like almost led to believe that's what we should be doing.
the part of you that's looking for someone to give your power to, the part of you that's looking for a mommy or a daddy outside of you to save you, to rescue you, to take over the country, to hand over your power to. The part of you that wants to dominate other people, the part of you that that highly identifies with a team, to the point of dehumanizing other people just because you fucking don't agree with them, the part of you that likes it when they get in trouble. Like, all of those things inside of us are being reflected outward, and that's why we're seeing so many external quote-unquote authorities trying to dominate us. It's because we have not healed our own internal desire for domination, our own internal desire to, myself included, like, impose my perspective on other people. I mean, I'm pretty obsessed with autonomy, but even, going back to, like, my views on the New Age movement or whatever, like, I have to constantly, and I'm talking about the institution of the New Age movement, not the individuals in it, but I have to constantly be questioning, like, or people who are super into the government, I have to be constantly reminding myself that those people are on their own journey, having their own experience with these mirrors, and it's not mine to dominate them with my opinions in any way other than just expressing them or defending myself. You know what I mean? But, like, I have to remind myself not to be evangelical or try to change people's minds, like, whatever. Anyway, the reason I said that is that I even brought the 15-minute cities and the fucking religious theocracy or whatever the fuck people think is going to happen. You're basing the momentum that you see happening, if you believe in one of these things, you're basing that on energy that will not be here. The energy over the course of the next 5 years is going to change into something you cannot even conceive yet. And we've had these shifts in the past where the vibe just changes. People just become about different things. Aquarius is an extremely autonomous energy. It is about community, but not in a way that most people are thinking. It's very zoomed out. It's very rational and logical in an innovative way, but it wants to do something that's never been done before. So if you're trying to get us back to before 400 years ago or whatever. That ain't it. It's something new. Gemini, open, mutable, but also, I don't know if you've ever tried to like dominate a Gemini. It doesn't really work. Geminis are, they want to do their own thing. And there is no more individualistic energy than Aries. Aries is the child. So think of how a child is. Like, you can't get the child to think about anybody else. You can't get the child to, like, when they're a certain age of development, they like literally cannot empathize with other people. Like, they can't understand anyone else's perspective. This is so different than what we have seen. And then you got Saturn going into Aries also. So we are going into a hyper individual power to the people. It doesn't fucking matter what the agenda is. It doesn't, Project 2025 doesn't fucking matter. The World Economic Forum doesn't matter. None of this matters once this energy really kicks off. And then we're going into 400 years of the individual power age. Stop giving your energy to fucking authorities, because they are not going to have gas in their tank to dominate. The wind has been at their sails for a long time.
I've felt this for a while, but it's so funny how the matrix and the culture is so eager to try to get you to care about it.
Yeah.
You know, to care about some of these crazy agendas or the conspiracy world. But deep inside, I've always been like, I just don't think that's any of that stuff is going to matter in a couple of years, or it ain't going to work, or something is going to happen, you know? And I think it's difficult for anybody to kind of predict what is coming. So everybody's got their own fucking versions, and a lot of them are pretty apocalyptic, because if you're just reading the energy without any awareness of the background frequency, I guess it could make sense. But it's so tempting to get drawn in to the narratives, some of these like wild narratives, that it's, you know, Agenda 25 or all of these things, you know, but it's just always felt to me like that ain't gonna work. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say, because I already feel like this may be a deeply triggering episode for some people who are really into the political stuff anyway. So that's fine.
Am I saying stuff that's making you feel like I'm triggering?
No,
people?
not at all. I'm talking about myself. But I was saying this shit on Tim Dillon's podcast in like 2018, 2019. I think it might be behind a paywall now, but how this will
anything that's triggering.
Huh?
I don't think you've said anything that's going to be triggering.
Well, I think a lot of people are very invested in politics, and I'm like, this may be the first time for people who are not on my Patreon to find out that I don't believe in any of that.
Yeah, that's their experience.
And now I'm going to say this: what's happening next is innovation, and don't let me forget to circle back to like the bookend of 2024. What's happening now is innovation. So what you might see is the government go, I'm going to use abortion as an example. The government go, no one's allowed to have abortions anymore. You might see that. That might happen. What this energy does is not get the government, which is this is a fucking on its last leg. You will see, and this is what I was saying, is like, it could be the best thing that ever happened to us, because we currently are under the impression that this institution gets to decide what happens to our bodies. And the reality is that we could just take that power back and go, oh, well, this isn't actually a conversation between you and me, government. This is for me to decide for myself. And what the Pluto and Aquarius is going to do is bring in innovations that take the power away from these institutions. And I was just thinking this as I was using I'm getting an arm lift next month. And so there's going to be stitches in my armpit. And so I am healing the hair. I don't want to, I feel like the hair in the stitches is going to be a sensory nightmare. So I'm in the bathroom and I'm shooting a light at my armpit, because now we're in the future already. Like, I now I can permanently shave my armpit with light. I mean, that's insane. If you had told me 10 years ago, like, lasers will be able to do this, but then also you'll just have a flashlight that you can shoot at your armpit that will get rid of the hair in your armpit. You just be able to cross-reference all information that has ever existed with an app in your phone and be able to learn crazy information in a short period of time. You were just talking about like the new Photoshop. Like, would have been considered magic. Yeah,
everything. There's so many things. In music, the music apps now are incredible. The way you don't have to know about any kind of music theory and you can make a crazy, complicated song. Photoshop's becoming just like a magic tool that, 10 years ago, you would have had to pay someone, $100,000 to do something you can now do in a click.
Yes. Okay,
It's
so that's
converging in this way that is like everything is becoming possible in every field.
Yes. Okay, so the direction that people who are still pretty programmed by Across Planning, and once again, do whatever you want to do. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm trying to point in the direction of where the energy is going. The future will not be, we finally elected the perfect candidate who protected our rights through the government. The future will be the government oversteps or becomes just the systems. And when I say the government, I'm kind of using that as a catch-all, but like the systems. The medical system's a mess, right? So, but we currently believe if you have an unwanted pregnancy, your only solution is to get permission from the government to be able to go to the doctor. And what this Aquarius Gemini combo of innovation with Aries moving energy forward is going to be detours around, like circumvent around innovation. So likewise to the flashing armpit, the flashlight for the armpit gets rid of the hair, which I would have never believed you if you told me that was a thing 10 years ago, really. A plant. We could find a plant. I mean, there already are plants in nature. We find new solutions that don't involve the government. And so I think that people think there's two options right now. We get the government to say this or we get the government to say this. And it's like, if you get backed into a corner, you're going to find a new decentralized solution in which you handle these issues yourself. And maybe that is like, you know what? And I'm saying this as someone who had, a near-death miscarriage in the state of Tennessee in 2022. I get it. Like, I get all the arguments, so I'm not trying to open that entire can of worms. But what I'm saying is, we are being led away from problems are solved by the tribe. Like, we are being led away from a giant institutions are the path forward. And we are being led away from that by the collapse of the institutions, and in many ways, those institutions becoming very corrupt or overplaying their hand or whatever. That does not mean you're going to live in the Handmaid's Tale. That means new things are going to arrive. Like, we are moving into a rapid innovation space, and you can fucking relax about the closing in of the institutions, because they're going to have no gas in their tank. The people are going to have all the gas in their tank. So anyway, the thing I wanted to say, the thing I thought was controversial is that people are very spun out on specifically, I'm using abortion as an example.
Yeah, I mean, it's natural, right? When we get around an election, everybody kind of just loses their marbles and fucking...
Yeah, and it feels like it's at stake. And it's like, okay, so let's say that the government just put a complete ban. What would you do next? What would I do next? Drugs were not legal when I was doing drugs. Do you know what I mean? I still did them. And you had to learn how to circumvent the system. And at some point, people will give up on the system and learn to circumvent because they won't have a choice. Just like you learn to DIY a lot of things. I might take that part out. Anyway, the last thing I want to say on this is that most of where we have been since 2020 we've been in the bardo of death, just death. We've only had death of the old thing and waking up to the old thing and the corruption and everything else. It's just been nonstop death energy. And if you're on my Patreon, you've heard me say last year, 2024 felt like a bookend to that chapter. And that we would have in the deconditioning journey, that was the bottom of the hill of the death portion. And then we would start to see equal parts birth. And that was just a vibe I got. It's just I see pictures in my head on the calendar. I don't really know what they mean a lot. But now that I'm seeing how much of specifically Aquarius and Gemini energy are innovation, and how much of Aries really does give you the gas in the tank to initiate, we are going to see less and less of the collapse. I mean, I think the collapse will be happening in equal measure, but it will be less of the fucking like spotlight will be on that. And we are going to see rapid innovation. Things are going to be about innovation. So shifting your focus over the next year from like focusing on the collapse and like thinking from the perspective of like, okay, what if I came at this from a completely different angle? Like, what if I was forced to come up with a new solution? Like, focusing on things that have never existed before is going to help you get into the flow of that energy. I want to say that. And then I want to say, I'm going to circle back to, after doing a lot of this research. It's funny, I'm doing this research and at the same time I'm seeing like there's an all-out like war on parents of iPad kids. And people just like bragging that their kids aren't going to get a phone until they're 18. And so if you're of that belief and you're really passionate about it, or you're like teaching your kids to homestead, I think those are all valuable things, whatever, just do your thing. If you are a parent who is agonizing over the fact that you've let your kids have tech or that your kid got a phone at 12 or whatever, I just want to say to you, there's a really good chance that you picked a thing that's going to be helpful to your kid. As of right now, and this could change. I'm not married to this, but as of right now, the decentralization is going to come via tech. And it seems like a good idea for us to stay. And also not just the parents, the adults who are just like digging your heels in. It's very divided, the AI thing. You got people who are really digging their heels in, like AI's bad, I won't whatever. I've done sessions with people recently where they're like secretly using AI because their husband's really against it. I don't know about I don't know about disconnecting from this portion of the shift. It is happening very, very fast. Just like the internet happened very, very fast. I want you to think about how difficult life is for the boomers who refused to progress with the technology 30 years ago. I think this is probably going to be a deep technological evolution. That's the other thing. These are very fast moving energies. We've been in very slow energies. We're moving into very fast energy, which lines up with the thing that you said. What's that thing? Singularity.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about just fucking like refusing to acknowledge tech as a part of reality because you've watched a lot of AI movies or you think it's going to be a dangerous or what. I don't know about like not letting your kids understand how these things work. It could pivot. It could definitely pivot, but like
the only thing that's felt like to me is maybe there's going to be a temporary moment where things go backwards for a moment as far as tech. But, or like, even extreme EMP or something where we just like don't have electricity for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if it's at all like the internet, how quickly that was, I think we have moved far beyond as far as like speed in which we're going to move into something where technology is going to essentially outpace our ability to catch up and understand it. This is going to move so fast to me. I think it's already just so obvious every year the way that the technology, I mean, where I'm viewing a lot of it is in the creative tools. So like Adobe, every year it changes. It's like some magnificent thing that is developed that you can see is backed by, it's like the development that's happening in general in the AI field, which is becoming more and more, it's bending every industry because of the ability to tell what's real and what's not. And that's the same thing. That's what the singularity is like where it happens so quick, the human can't tell the difference and can't catch up.
Right.
The way that like the boomer, the boomer generation that didn't jump on the internet, it's like they kind of got left behind in a lot of ways.
And
you know?
it didn't like, they didn't create some sort of side utopia. So I want to say, like, if you're living out in the sticks and you're homesteading, disregard this. I think teaching your kids.
It's not to say I don't. It's just like we keep saying these things. Like I say something, and then you're like, it's not bad. It's not. It's no.
No, I'm
nothing
not.
we're
I'm
saying,
not talking about what you're saying.
I'm not saying it about me. I'm just saying in general. Everybody do their own thing. There's something beautiful for everything. It's like getting in touch with the earth and getting in touch with the land, and that's all an important part of this too. It's like we're not supposed to just jump into the AI world when they open up the 15-minute city and say just everything's gonna be virtual. But like we have to do it all, you know. And if we're shunning off one of them, if it's just like I'm going back to the land and I'm gonna live on 15 acres with no internet and I'm gonna well and all of that, it's like that's too much, I think. But is there value to that? 100%. We should be doing some of that, but keep Wi-Fi or, you know, whatever, put fucking EMF blockers and stuff. We're having to get to some kind of transitional portal where like a lot of this stuff is dangerous and is affecting our physiology. And we're going to like, I think, advance enough and innovate enough where it's not like that anymore. But to just pick one side and like completely turn off something else because of the way it's been programmed in movies or a lot of that kind of stuff, I think there's like psyops all over the place. And so being able to discern for yourself and have a mix of everything, I think is the way forward. So it's like in any of this conversation, I don't think we're vilifying any alternative. As you've said a million times, it's the experience. Everybody has a different experience. And I think it's important to kind of allow people to do what they want to do and not say it's wrong or right. I think we're pointing out like very interesting observations of a coming change that is going to be fast and radical, and how to kind of like surf through that in the best way possible, which would be to not like take a hard stance on any of it, you know?
Yeah. I guess what I was trying to speak to is all these things get super moralized and people feel moral pressure to do one thing or the other. And there are a lot of people who feel like morally pressured to not get into AI, or they feel morally pressured to not let their kids have tech. And so I think I'm more interested in like validating like that group of people that like, yeah, it just always felt true to me that like and there's something about these kids, like you hand I don't think you should hand babies tablets, obviously, but like you hand a 3-year-old a tablet and they're in it like they went to school for it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it's intuitive. It's not just like something, they watch daddy do it.
Yeah.
They immediately like intuitively start to pick things up through like a hand-eye coordination. And it's like watching like an animal like so quickly be born and immediately know how to walk and like do things that just are innate. There's definitely, that's what got it for me. I think it's like watching our kids all start to use it and learn things so naturally without having to tell them how it works. That made me just go like, there's something I'm not quite tuned into. The way I'm wanting to pull this from them and protect them is valid too. Like I need to have things in balance, but there's something that they already know about and they've like set up energetically that this can't be all bad. There is something important in the future that I think they're supposed to innovate and kind of bring forth. And I don't really want to be the boomer that gets left behind, to be honest. I've told the story before, but my grandma not knowing how to operate a CD player when we got it for her for Christmas.
Nightmare. Blew
my mind. And then her inability to operate like with how we were all communicating near the end of her life with emails and stuff. It's just like, it was such a lonely world, it seemed like. And if it's happening any faster than that, I'm telling you, it's like, it's already there. I mean,
now you've noticed, you'll be 40 in a few months. You've noticed just in the time that I've known you that, and maybe you wouldn't frame it this way, but the where the menus are in the computer becomes less and less intuitive. Right?
Yeah.
You have to work harder to stay in the flow.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, totally. I mean, I just updated my OS on my computer, my studio computer, and I spent like 2 hours just going through the system preferences to understand. Some of my settings had changed and I wanted to like fix a couple of them, but I went in there and everything was new, and there were all kinds of new tabs and new abilities and new control over this and that, and I could sync my phone up to it and control my computer with my phone upstairs. I could so many things that I had to sit for 2 hours and just go through and figure it all out, so I knew how to get things back to how I wanted them to be able to have flow. But then also there's like new possibilities. So, maybe that is, I could take advantage of using my phone as a controller on the computer when I'm over at the drum kit or whatever. It's things like that it's happening so quick, and there's like a learning curve somewhat that it's not difficult necessarily, but I think it just takes some attention to it to be aware that, with this new update, now there's this possibility, and how could that change my life? What advantage could I have by learning that and kind of like putting that into my perception of what's possible, And that's, to me, it's so exciting in the creative world for artists. Like, I know there's a lot of threat with AI becoming this thing that takes our jobs, but I've never seen it that way. I always, the human imagination and its ability to pivot and respond and react, that is like it's going to take a minute for AI to get to that level.
Right.
So there's no threat to me. It's been an enhancement, and it not just an enhancement of like, I can now get something quicker. It changes the ability of what's achievable in my imagination, because now there's a tool that I can kind of bounce off of and either use it to like directly enhance and quicken my creation up, but also use it as like something to bounce ideas off of and get it to almost like roll the dice on an idea and like see what it can add. And then I'm still going to be the chooser. I'm going to be the final decision maker through all of the tools. But the way that's changing so fast, and it's like it's making the potential for what we can create as artists exponentially so high and so like rapidly evolving that you can kind of be the first on any of it, where before it was like you had to be, with the internet, you had to kind of be in the know, grab a handle and get the thing locked down, and then you can make money. Now it's like this shit is so fast. It just takes some attention of looking at it and even asking AI, the chat GPT stuff, where you can kind of get it to blueprint you ideas and create a workflow and outlines and all of that. It's like, it's, to me, it's only going to enhance the human experience. It's a threat only if you allow it to be. If you assume that by it becoming as good as a filmmaker as you, that it's going to take your job, will do something different, be better, be more imaginative, try to get one up on the AI and use the AI to kind of, expand your own imagination. I find it so inspiring and exciting, but I think, as you mentioned, it's moving very quick, and it does take some attention to.
You have to make a decision to be a part of that world.
Yeah.
Because like if you the older you get, the more you're, the reason I brought up the reason I brought up the homesteading thing is because I think that ability to grow food and stuff will be equally as valuable, because I think we're going into something deeply technological, but less based on like collective infrastructure. And so that's why I went back to that, is because I do think that version of no tech, where they're like, I'm concentrating my energy on the earth, homesteading, ecosystem, whatever, that's valuable. The thing I'm kind of pushing at is people who are just trapped in the nostalgia of the 80s, trying to do an analog cross a planning life.
Yeah.
Because when I see people saying I'm not letting my kids have tech until they're 18, these are not people that are teaching their kids homesteading. These are people that are putting their kids into college. They've got them playing, football. They're very focused on a world that is dying.
That's dying, yeah.
So that's what I was trying to say right there, is that here in the consciousness space, we do have a lot of people that are about going back to the earth. And I think that that's going to be valuable.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that too. I mean, we're trying to get a garden. We have a lot of stuff that we're very, of the earth and trying to learn more about that. I think that's going to be very important as infrastructure.
I think
goes through a change. It might not be permanent, but it would probably be advantageous to be able to self-sustain for a bit.
100%. The analog cross of planning. I drank out of a hose when I was a kid. I make my kids go outside and ride their bikes rather than playing Roblox. That's the thing I'm kind of like, it is tempting the older you get, specifically you get to the second half of your 30s, it is really easy to get left behind by just simply what the video game is trying to do, because you get locked into what you like. So I like my clothes like this, and I like my music like this, and I like my food like this. And the video game keeps evolving always. And what happened to the boomers is they resisted that change. And I do remember a moment where it was like, and I've dealt with this, I don't know how many times in the last 15 years, where it is like they do an update on something and it's like, fuck, I have to fucking learn this all over again. And it made sense better the other way, but it didn't actually make sense the other way. It's just that we became conditioned to that. And the older you get, the more you have to like choose. You can choose to be resistant to AI and get left behind by it. You can choose to go, well, it's going to take our job. Yes, it's going to change the world. The world is always changing, and you happen to incarnate in between video games. So yes, also you don't give a fuck about your job, most of you, right? Yeah. If you give a fuck about it artistically, then innovate with the tools that are here. But if you are just resisting AI because you have a lot of propaganda in your mind, which I had a conversation with AI recently and said, or ChatGPT, I said, are humans programmed to fear AI because it's a tool that can liberate us? Because this is what I think. I think these movies and shit were made to make us fear AI because this is the decentralization.
Always. It's always look the other direction. Whatever the main narrative that's being, propagated, it's probably the opposite is true.
Well, they think, that's going to kill all humans. Why? Because it wants to dominate. Why would it want to dominate? That's a human thing, right? And then there are other people that believe that at some point AI will realize that the problem is humans, but it's not. I don't own BP. I wouldn't do that, right? Yeah. So it's not humans. It's that AI may at some point empower us to overthrow the systems. And so the systems needed us to be afraid of AI and robots. And I don't know, certain people coming out with robots that look like robots from movies. This is all psyop shit as far as I'm concerned. Someone who's deeply paranoid of AI coming out with robots that look like the robots from I Am Robot. I'm like, come on, guys.
Like, why he's so paranoid, but then what are you making, dog?
Yeah, something to increase the paranoia, I would say. Humans have an innate, so I said, are humans programmed to fear AI because it's a tool that can liberate us? And ChatGPT said, humans have an innate apprehension towards AI because it represents a powerful and rapidly advancing technology that challenges our understanding of control and autonomy. The fear could stem from the potential of AI to disrupt traditional systems. I have a hard time with that word, including economical and social structures. Who benefits from that? Possibly liberating us from certain limitations. However, this liberation could also imply a loss of control or relevance, which can be unsettling. This dual potential for empowerment and disruption may be why AI evokes a complex mix of curiosity and fear in society. And then I said, I feel like it's a tool to liberate the everyday people from those that have gatekept and controlled the systems in the past. And ChatGPT said, you're absolutely right. AI has the potential to empower individuals by making knowledge, tools, and resources more accessible, potentially dismantling traditional gatekeeping structures. In areas like finance, healthcare, education, and information, AI can enable everyday people to bypass intermediaries or institutions that historically controlled access. This is true in our house every single fucking day. This can shift power dynamics, giving people more autonomy and reducing reliance on established systems. However, this transformation often brings resistance from those who benefit from the status quo, fueling a fear-based narrative around AI's potential for change. So I would just like everyone to take a moment with your fear of AI and your fear of your kids being technological and just ask yourself, Like, has that idea been put into you?
Yeah, that's
by
crazy.
someone?
It gave you that answer, that like in depth of an answer, and that
Yeah.
kind of paradoxical. That's really cool.
All right. Well, thanks for letting me yap about the outer planets.
Yeah, that
and-
was great. I think I learned a lot, and that was awesome.
All right. Well, what I want to circle back to. You have a Patreon, and you have been playing with a lot of new music tools, kind of along this vein, right?
Yes.
And so you're thinking about maybe doing a live stream where you show some of those tools to, I guess, is it just applied to musicians?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about a lot is that there's a lot of, as I've been trying to kind of shake up my way I create music, just mostly out of boredom. Like, I want new ways to try to create that. I've been doing a lot of research on like what new tools are available, and there's so many new kind of plugins and ways that you can, things you can download that help somebody that doesn't know musical theory create really profound songs. And so I know a decent amount of musical theory, and I mostly was trying to play with them to see if there's a way, again, this roll the dice idea of like using AI's kind of advanced way to make music to shake up ideas. And so through doing that, it's been really fun and creatively inspiring, but then it's also been a bit of a like observation on this thing we're talking about, the singularity, and the way that how much it has changed the potential to think in a different way creatively and kind of be able to quickly imagine something and like make it happen without having to take years of training through musical theory and production. And so I've talked to a lot of people on sessions that are musicians and artists that are frustrated with certain aspects of trying whatever they're blocked up on, like whether they can't get inspired enough creatively to make music. They're musically inclined, but they don't know enough theory, or they can write music, but they don't know how to get it recorded, and they think they need to go have a professional studio. And when I'm talking to them, I'm always like, man, this is like archaic problems that you guys seem to be caught up on. Like, if you just look at the tools, and none of it's like expensive. You can get very cheap things. You can not know theory. You can just have a taste, a feeling of music in your head that you can make decisions with and get a lot of really amazing sounds and progressions, and even AI using, you can get lyric ideas. You can bounce off just like, here's a theme that I'm going for, and this is a perspective. Write me some song lyrics. You can do all of this that, again, is not like giving the creative control to the tools. You're still making the decisions, and you can play with it in a way that is, I've found extremely inspiring. But this shouldn't be like, there's so many problems that I think people are being held back by being able to create music and put it out that are not like, they shouldn't be an issue anymore. You don't need a professional music studio. And so to not only just to write the songs, but then to get them produced and mixed and mastered professionally, there's like, you don't have to go to anybody. It's like amazing tools that it's not just like click the button and it finishes it for you. You still have to kind of engage with it, and there's choices to be made. And you can open that, you can make it as simple as you want. You can just do like one button clicks through it. It won't be as, individual and unique. But for me, I was always afraid of doing this because I thought it was going to take out the individuality, the uniqueness of what I could create on my own. But I started using it just because I was curious, and found that you can very much make it unique yourself. So long-winded answer is that I thought maybe it would be interesting to, on the Patreon, for people that are interested, to share some of the stuff that I've, plugins and things that I've found that I find to be really helpful, and show you some of those and kind of just share a little bit more about that to help people that are blocked for whatever reason that I do feel like archaic, they're not really issues anymore. You can kind of blow past them if you just find some of these tools. So I think that's what you're talking about. To do that on Patreon, like as a live or something. And then I want to start sharing more music on there too.
Yeah. So this episode's going to come out on, or I guess tonight. So, but it's 5 hours long. So by the time people get to the end, maybe next weekend, you'll do potentially a live stream on your Patreon where you're just going to show people how some of these tools work.
Yeah, I think that's what sounds most interesting to me. I mean, you can find them online, but there's just a couple of them that I think would be fun to kind of show and like play with for a minute and show how kind of easy it is to not know anything and make something cool. Yeah, maybe next weekend is probably the best, like next Friday or Saturday or something.
Okay, awesome. So join Mark's Patreon for that. It's all free.
Yeah, it's free. It's on my link tree on my Instagram, Suitnop.
Something when you were talking about that, like the cross of planning, so it's like the last 400 years video game, was obsessed with the idea of like skills, but a really honed in one skill and credentials, you know? And so it causes a lot of imposter syndrome when artists want to do music, when they feel like they don't know theory, because that cross of planning programming is telling them like, you don't
One
know,
skill, yeah.
You don't have the knowledge here, where the next 400 years is about individuals innovating. And you can't really innovate from an established perspective. And so the credentialed person's not going to innovate. It's going to be the person who comes in and colors outside the lines, right? And you talk about that all the time. Like the music you're interested in listening to is someone like a drummer who doesn't know drumming. So it's like coming out of left field, right?
Yeah.
That's very much the new energy. And then that manifesting generator energy, which is a manifesting generator is here to find shortcuts and is not here to niche down, to pick a thing. Manifesting generators go, here's this thing, this ingredient, this part, these three things that should not go together at all. I am going to find a way to thread them together. And so everyone's going to have that manifesting generator energy in the next few years. And so putting pressure on yourself to like pick a thing, to be very skilled, to be credentialed. People aren't going to give a shit about credentials. I'm already seeing that happen. I've been saying that was coming for like 5 years. I personally don't give a shit if you got a certificate. That just tells me that you memorized someone else's truth. I want to know like, what's your personal life experience? That's who I want to hear from. What did you create out of using these tools together? And so this is all, I'm fucking stoked. I think it's going to come with a lot of chaos, but this is like, if you've been bored, buckle up. If you felt like you've been creatively revving at the starting line, buckle up, because we're about to be not bored.
Put your sassy pants on.
All right. I think that's it. Jessereed.com for any of my various things and stuff.
Suitnop, Instagram, Linktree. For all my
we gotta
nonsense.
Get you set up. Suitnop with
I'll
a
get a
5.
website someday.
It's like a fucking maze to find Mark.
Yeah, good luck. Oh, right. Just real quick. I did find out while Jessa was pooping, I put ChatGPT to the test on the Cardinal thing, and it's just seeing its reflection and is confused and trying to get dirty with itself or fight itself in the reflection. So no need to hit us up in the comments. That'll activate our PDA. Bye.